Episode 16.
Episode 16. It's our sweet 16, and we're celebrating today. We're celebrating with Monster. How come we're not
Are you looking for another endorsement?
How come we're not celebrating with Lafroig?
We could be. I mean, you're going to mix scotch and energy drinks. I mean,
I'm not afraid.
it can be done. It can be done. I'm not saying you can't do it. It's not prudent. But
Are we live?
You can do it.
Are we on?
Yeah, you are. You're live. You're on the interwebs. So today, topics we wanted to talk about, the latest Jeffrey Epstein craziness. Like I've been following this story since like 2014, 2015, when people used to laugh at me for even bringing it up. And now we're at this point where it's like right in everyone's face. Like people are aware of it, which is a good thing. But it's like also a story where like you don't know where the bottom is.
No.
That's what's interesting about it.
It's deep.
Well, it's interesting that you don't know where the bottom of it is. So there's the inherent mystery involved, but also there's just the fact that all of us know something's wrong there. Like everyone, I don't care what your politics are, what walk of life you come from. Every single one of us is like something's dirty here.
Yeah.
And yet nothing happens.
No. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Team House with Jack Murphy and Dave Park. So we're a couple of veterans who talk about stuff.
This is a commentary show, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
There's plenty of bro talk, but also we talk about some pretty serious issues. And also a lot of audience participation. I've done a lot of podcasts previously, but doing a live stream, there's like a lot of like interaction with the viewers.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Strike, I agree with you. Whiskey does go with it. Tonight we're going to talk about Epstein, Prince Andrew. Oh, more war crimes?
Some war crime stuff, or at least some of the latest developments on all of that. That's another, like, I wouldn't compare it to like the whole Epstein thing, but I mean, it's a soap opera that just keeps going and going.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think it's going to end anytime soon, just because, I mean, yeah, the public doesn't really know where the bottom is on that one either, but I mean, it's going to be scandal after scandal, I think.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, it's been 18 years, man. And
yeah.
Like a lot of dirt has been swept under the rug.
Yeah.
So I mean, even after Trump is out of office, even after the whole thing with, Chief Gallagher and all that kind of like dies down.
Yeah.
There's going to be other scandals after that. It's just going to keep coming and get worse and worse, sadly. And then I want to talk a little bit about the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard commandos, I see.
Yeah, Coast Guard commandos. I did a story on them seizing another narco sub the other day. And the Coast Guard has like some interesting like paramilitary capabilities.
Sure.
Just interesting to talk about a little bit. Maybe we can get one of those guys on here to interview one day.
Okay. Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool. They're called like, there's a couple different units we'll get into, but they have guys who do specifically like ship seizures and things like that.
Yeah. Anyway, it is our Sweet 16. We are celebrating. With Monster right now, I really think we should break out some Lafroig though.
Okay, after I finish this Monster drink, I will be open to having a glass of Lafroig. I'm not going to double fist a Scotch and a Monster drink.
Or maybe we should put these aside and just.
I'm 36 years old. I'm supposed to be grown up now, Dave. Supposed to be in the.
You're drinking pure caffeine from a red can. You have.
It's not pure caffeine.
It's basically
at least 50% corn syrup.
Yeah, that's true. It's basically Code Red, Mountain Dew Code Red. But the real reason we're celebrating is because we are official. We are official YouTubers.
Yeah.
If you look down onto your comments section, you'll see a little $sign. You know what that is? That is Super Chat. That means that when you want to get our attention or ask us a question or just say, hey, you guys are doing an outrageously great job, or you guys are just a soup sandwich, you can give us $1 or $5 or whatever.
It's a tip jar.
It's a tip jar.
Yeah.
It's a tip jar and it gets our attention because it moves like it at least you'll see it. I mean, everybody will see it, but it'll show up differently for you.
Yeah, no, if somebody donates, we will certainly try to answer their query. This site is monetized.
Yeah, on Patreon, we're about roughly halfway, a little less than halfway to paying rent on this place.
Yeah.
And making it sort of self-sustaining.
Yeah, we have new Patreon supporters, we have new subscribers, and really the only reason why the site went monetized is because of you guys subscribing and watching the show. That's the reason why. There's like a threshold you have to meet before you're able to do that.
Yeah.
So, that's because of you guys.
And we've got a couple things planned up for our Patreon supporters. A couple of...
Yeah. So the next 3 shows after this, like one of the things that I have not been happy with the stream is that we haven't had guests interviewed, and I don't think every show has to have a guest.
Yeah.
But I think it should more often than not.
Yeah.
Just to keep things fresh.
It's better than just listening to us.
Right. But the next 3 shows are going to have in-studio guests. So the next one up is my friend who was a foreign volunteer in several different forces overseas.
Fantastic.
He will be in. We're going to interview him. I want to have him for 3 hours, really going in depth with him about some stuff. And then after that, the next show is going to be a friend of mine who was in civil affairs, and he's going to try to bring his buddy who was in psyops.
Good, because we could a fist fight would be good. Like civil affairs versus psyops. Let's finally put it to bed. Who is
the real fight is between civil affairs and special forces, or psyops and special forces.
Really?
It's SF that there are grievances with.
Really? I always thought it was between the two.
No, I don't. No, not so much between the two.
All right.
But we will have a pillow fight. Wow! Somebody just hit us with $10. Our first super chat. Anastasia.
Oh.
Thank you, young lady. We really appreciate it.
That's Anastasia.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so you know this young woman?
I do indeed.
Okay.
I do indeed.
Good work, Dave.
Thank you, Anastasia.
Well done. So we will have them in, and then after that, the show after that is going to be 2 authors who write. They're the authors who write the Tier 1 fiction series, novel series. So we're going to have both of those guys in and talking to them. And the other thing I'm going to do when we have these live guests in is record some added content, exclusive content for the Patreon supporters.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get my buddy, my civil affairs buddy in here. He's going to tell the story about the Congo hookers when he deployed to the Congo and his squad leader did not last very long in country, actually less than 24 hours.
Because the Congo hookers are fierce.
Don't blame the hookers, Dave. It's not the hookers' fault.
Okay.
He did some things that probably he shouldn't have done in country, and was promptly booted off of that mission. So we're gonna definitely do some exclusive content for the people who support the stream.
Yeah. Well, and also
the right thing to do for them.
Also, Jack and I are gonna have a up close and personal, I think, with a little Q&A for our Patreon supporters.
Yeah.
Where we talk, obviously we can't go into OPSEC, operational security, things, about specific things that we did when in the service, but we can ask more personal questions, or we can answer more personal questions about, Ranger Battalion or Special Forces or Iraq, Afghanistan,
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy to go into almost anything. The only things I would not talk about, that I would not be willing to put, to live on the internet is maybe some family stuff.
Yeah.
And a few very specific details about stuff in the military, specific room clearing procedures or intelligence gathering techniques I would steer away from. But
yeah.
Other than that, I don't give a shit.
And maybe we can get Annie on. So, anyway,
So yeah, that's going to be the show for today, and then we will go off in many different directions as we usually do. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the first thing with Epstein is the two guards that were supposed to be keeping tabs on him because he was on suicide watch, were apparently napping and buying stuff, doing some online shopping, and not monitoring Jeff Epstein when he hung and killed himself in his jail cell.
Yeah.
Took a tattered, ripped piece of blanket and made like a hang noose and hung himself.
Yeah.
And it's a man and a woman. They arrested both of them. And I can't remember exactly what the charge is, but for negligence and not performing their duties, right? And I was reading today actually that apparently the female guard is like ready to turn state's evidence, like wants a plea deal, like I'll tell you everything.
So here is something very telling that I thought. Her attorney, this is his quote. This is her attorney's quote, which is why I found this interesting. Because her attorney, when speaking about it, said, where is it? I took a screenshot of it so I don't have to scroll the whole article.
Yeah, but
it is our hope to persuade the government officials not to create another victim of Jeffrey Epstein's apparent act of suicide. Now, why is her attorney saying apparent act of suicide when it was ruled by the New York medical examiner chief that it was a suicide? Why is now he using the word apparent?
Yeah, like now it's alleged.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought the case was closed.
Yeah.
Case closed.
So that was kind of interesting. I mean, whether she has beans to spill, who knows? Whether she's just going to rat out the prison that, this is what everybody does all the time. Yeah. It's not my fault. It's the supervisor's fault. And, I think that it would be interesting to, because obviously they have footage of every other night, right? And even the nights that Epstein wasn't there. I'm sure that all that stuff is on DVR for historical. So it'd be interesting to go back and see if these two didn't make their rounds on a consistent basis.
Well, a bunch of security cameras were broken that night.
No, but what I mean is like the week before.
Oh,
3 nights before.
Right.
Like is it consistent with
were
behavior?
Were they always shitbags?
Were they always shitbags, or were they specifically shitbags for this special occasion?
Yeah, that one day.
Yeah. Because while I think it's very I think it's very likely that his death was not a suicide, that the camera's out. But then again, maybe a bunch of cameras it's like, maybe it's just a shit prison. Maybe they're not taking care of stuff. Maybe a bunch of their cameras are out.
You know where that prison is, right? It's right down by Chinatown. That big, ugly building down there. Yeah.
Nice.
It's right there on like a main square.
You'd think they'd put Epstein in someplace nicer.
Well, it is like the federal lockup.
Yeah.
Maximum security, whatever, federal lockup in New York City.
Yeah.
But I mean, the guards going AWOL, the security cameras, like both of them broken at the same time.
Right.
Like I was saying, it's just one of those things like, we all know something don't smell right here, and you can't just keep saying, you're a conspiracy theorist, Jack. You're a conspiracy theorist. Like, no, there's something a little fucking weird here.
No, I agree. And at the same time, we also, we need to know, was that camera just broken that night, or has that camera been broken for
a year.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
Right. Did they just not make their rounds that night, or does the historical camera footage show that they never make their rounds? Because even if those things are true, even if that camera had been broken for a long time, even if they never made the rounds, that's possibly something that somebody exploited. If you know what I mean.
Oh, right.
Maybe it wasn't. The camera got Anyway.
Well, of course, if you are going to... I see what you're saying. I mean, if you are going to try for an assassination attempt, I mean, you do the social engineering ahead of time.
100%.
Like, you go in and you jam up the locks before the night. You go and break the cameras a few weeks ahead of time.
Right, yeah.
You what you'd probably call it, desensitizing the security.
100%. It's like, it's like sending animals, to trip off motion sensors.
Yeah.
It's the rats. We got a rat problem.
You go and shake the fences for a week.
Exactly.
So, the 150th time the guards are like, screw it.
Yeah, exactly. You wear, I mean, so we've heard.
Yeah. Well, if I'm here to go and get my tinfoil hat on, I would want to look at, did those guards acquire the account numbers for overseas bank accounts?
Right.
That would be one of my things that I would look at.
All right. Yeah, exactly. Have their spending habits changed at all? Because, you know, it wouldn't be too hard to give somebody $100,000 in cash, you know, or whatever.
And also interesting, it was either DOJ or FBI. They said this week when questioned that they are looking into whether or not there was a criminal enterprise behind this incident. Now, they're not saying that it was. They're saying they're looking at that possibility in addition to just being negligence.
Right. Well, when you're on some sort of duty, like guards or whatever, the records that they fill out, like their shift rounds, those are legal documents.
Right.
So by forging those, they are committing a crime right there.
Is that a felony crime?
I don't know. I don't know if that's a felony or not, but it is a crime.
Right.
So now, and then also, if they're talking about conspiracy, it could simply be, or an enterprise, it could simply be the conspiracy of we'll both forge, you know, we'll both falsify these documents.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Because they're colluding basically. Is it deeper? Is she gonna roll over? Is this? I mean,
I have to believe that. I mean, if you are, you know, we're going down this road with a criminal conspiracy. I mean, you're not going to tell the jail guard shit. I mean, all they're going to know is, you know, I got an email telling me not to do my rounds that night, and you know, I would have the Swiss bank account. Like, they're not going to be able to roll on too much.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to go down this road, you know.
Well, the thing is it wasn't. If the guards were involved, somebody above them was involved. Nobody without people who they would have to have some sort of access to know who was going to be on duty that night, right? Which means that somebody in the chain above them was identified as an accessible contact point. Like we know that this person is a supervisor, or we know this person is, you know, a captain or a warden, and I'm not saying that about the warden. I'm just saying it had to be somebody above them, because at their level, I think it's too hard to identify who they are and that they're going to be on shift that night. And you can't just approach everybody and go, "Hey, are you going to be on shift tonight?" Because then you've got all these other people that can spill the beans about it.
Well, I mean, my point of view on this subject, and I think remains, is I think he probably did kill himself, but I think you do have to look into the very real possibility that somebody received a payoff in the prison to look the other way.
Yeah.
You know, in this case, we're talking about the guards. You know, the cameras being broken. It's like you set the conditions to allow Epstein to do what. I mean, he had already made one suicide attempt, so he knew what he was supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, like somebody brought up in the comments, you know, his alleged madam, Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, her father, Robert Maxwell, had ties to Israeli intelligence. And if you look at Epstein, I mean, this is the whole thing, and this is the thread of it, that like journalists in America, I mean, frankly, I don't think they got the balls to go down this road and even look at it, is all the ties to Saudi and Israeli intelligence services. And I think that's the one thread no one wants to really explore, because start going down some dark roads, and some really big players end up wrapped up in it. Even, you know, obviously there already are some big players involved, but
like who?
I mean, Bill Clinton.
Anybody else come to mind?
Donald Trump.
Anybody else?
Who are you alluding to, Dave?
Prince Andrew.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, Andrew. We want to get into that, the interview.
I thought you were segueing. I'm sorry.
No, but that is a good segue. Yeah, the interview with Andrew. So Prince Andrew was friends with Jeff Epstein. He stayed with Epstein many times. They were pals. And he allegedly slept with a 17-year-old girl that Epstein had trafficked to him.
Right.
And what was her name? Virginia. She has gone public. Virginia was like a huge part of this case, and like kind of smashing it open because she refused to be silenced, and like she ran away from Epstein, like defected basically, and ran to Australia.
Yeah.
Good for her. And she produced a picture of her with Prince Andrew when she was underage. And so Prince Andrew has always been involved in this whole scandal. and he recently gave a interview to the British press trying to like clear his name.
Right.
And it did not go so well.
Did he clear his name?
Well, I'll put it. I mean, you go watch the interview for yourself. But I mean, he says he has no recollection of ever meeting the girl.
Right. He doesn't say I never met her.
I have
no recollection. The photo's probably fake.
He says the photo can't be real because he's hugging her in it, and he's not a hugging person.
Yeah.
And he's not into hugs because he's a public personality, and so he would never hug someone. So therefore, the photo can't be real. And also, the girl had described dancing with him and that he was very sweaty. And he said, that can't be true because I have a medical condition and I don't sweat. So you're watching this interview and it's like, well, okay, Prince Andrew, case closed, I guess. You know, I mean, it was like the most unconvincing load of bullshit that anyone's ever heard.
So does he pant? How does his body get rid of the heat?
You got me.
He's got to pant, right? If you don't sweat, you have to pant.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, it was the most pitiful performance I think any it was even worse than Bill Cosby.
He also would not, because they kept on asking, "Do you regret your friendship with him?"
And he wouldn't even say that.
He wouldn't say that. He said, I gained a lot." He tried to say that he would. He really played this really weird line.
Yeah.
I'm not friends with Epstein. Like he came to the palace, but it was because I invited his girlfriend. But at the same time, in December 2010, he went to go visit Epstein to tell him, I can't be your friend anymore.
But because he's a gentleman, he had to do it in person.
He had to do it in person.
It's like, dude, get the f***.
And then he continued to stay at Epstein's house while he was in New York after telling that. And then he went to a dinner party where he was allegedly the guest of honor that was celebrating Epstein's release from prison. So
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so it was a very slow. It was like, hey, we're not gonna be boyfriend and girlfriend anymore, but we'll still be like friends with benefits.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like it was a really weird breakup.
Sounds like total bullshit.
Yeah.
Sounds like bullshit. And it doesn't surprise me because like Andrew is a British royal. He was born into inherited multi-generational wealth and privilege and status.
Sure.
And that somebody like that feels no responsibility for anything whatsoever.
Right.
That he feels no sense of guilt or remorse because he has never been held accountable for anything in his entire life.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me that he's like, this is no big deal.
Yeah.
Well, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It was the same, like Epstein himself, I mean, when he got busted, I mean, he compared it at one point to like stealing a bagel. Like that he had enslaved all these underage, like 14-year-old girls. He's like, oh, well, you steal a bagel doesn't mean you're like a hardened criminal.
Right.
It's like that kind of like psychopathy behind it.
Yeah.
That like he legitimately felt that he had done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Like there's some people you just can't fucking rehabilitate.
Yeah.
There's no 100%. There's no fixing.
There are people that are broken.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what, sociopaths, psychopaths, that's like they don't feel remorse. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
Their brains are just
And then that other interview, I sent you the link for it. Let me pull it up real quick here. That I thought was pretty surreal. Where is it? Sorry, guys. I'm supposed to be a little bit more prepared here. So then there was another woman who went on a big like daytime news show in England, Good Morning Britain. Lady Colin Campbell.
Yeah.
I believe she has the title lady because she's married to a lord at one point.
She had a TV show at one point too, I think.
Did she?
Like a talk show or something, I believe.
She wrote a bunch of books about the royals also. She's feels some sort of affinity for them.
Sure.
It seems. And she went on there saying that, there's a different, that Epstein was not a pedophile.
No, the Prince Andrew wasn't. Oh, was she saying?
Both.
Yeah.
And she was saying there's a difference between a minor and a pedophile, and that he solicited a prostitute, or that he solicited a minor.
Right.
So, obviously you can't be a prostitute if you're trafficked, if you're a sex slave.
Right. Yeah, she was basically
making that
through some logic saying, that if you're trafficked or if you're solicited,
you're not a pedophile. You're not soliciting.
Right. Because
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a bizarre argument to make.
It's so weird.
Yeah, like there's something broken inside your mind that you think that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was totally surreal. And I mean, it was Piers Morgan of all people actually challenging her, like calling bullshit on it.
Yeah.
You know. Piers Morgan is not our favorite person.
Piers Morgan is like Bill Maher, you know, where like, you know what I mean? It's
like he's a troll.
Look, they're trolls, but then sometimes I think that they get like
pissed off.
They realize that they actually have to make a stand. Like Bill Maher just came out and said, like, I'm not going to tell any more Trump jokes. Like things are getting stupid now, and I think that the left has gone like way too far. You know, I think these people realize, like, and Piers Morgan does that too. You know, like Piers Morgan tried to pull that whole, with Ben Shapiro, the whole Second Amendment argument with, like, you know, gun rights and stuff. And I don't know, he just pulls these ludicrous, like, cockamamie.
Well, I guess he hit his limit with.
He must have.
With Colin Campbell.
Well, but that's also, though. That's not like a right or left issue, right? I mean, I think no matter what political spectrum, they would agree that you know. I mean, I think any decent human being would be like, "All right, lady, you're out of your gourd right now.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
shut the fuck up."
Yeah.
Can
we say fuck on YouTube?
You can say fuck on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we are
an adult channel.
We are an adult channel
because they're about to get hardcore on children's channels.
Yeah, because of people advertising to children without, like, I don't know, there's some federal law against it.
Yeah.
And I don't think YouTube, I think Google, who owns YouTube, has to pay a bunch of money.
Well, it's also about collecting their private information. And so,
right.
So, like, on children's channels now, on channels they see as children, is like there's not going to be any advertising allowed. They're not going to have like comment sections or like buttons because, like, once again, they can't collect that information and collect, you know, hitting a like button, I guess, collects information. What a lot of streamers are worried about, though, like adult streamers who do like video games, adult streamers who do comics, adult streamers who do stuff like that, it's like, hey, like, this isn't kids stuff that we're if kids watch us, that's one thing, but we're streaming for adults. But they're worried now that YouTube's just going to get unhinged with it.
I've even seen YouTubers freaking out because I'm interested in like models and I paint models, like little plastic and metal models, right? Like people who do that kind of stuff, like worried that they're going to be lumped in with like kids' toys.
I have to tell you something. So Jack is pretty new to Dungeons and Dragons, and for those of you who don't know, Jack and I are huge geeks. And play Dungeons and Dragons and read comics and
got tons of that stuff all around.
If you can see the studio, it is all D&D and comics. D&D on that side, comics on this side, and so Jack started playing with his daughter. That's how he discovered it, and then we started playing, and then he decided, you know, because you buy the little miniatures.
It's the gateway drug.
You know, to represent the world you're in. And then Jack decided to paint them. And then Jack decided to start watching YouTube videos about how to paint them. And then Jack got really fucking good at painting. Like, Jack paints a professional level. We're going to have to show him some of your miniatures.
I have them sitting right here.
Pull them out. We're not doing anything better, right? We can do this.
A little segue.
We can do this,
segue.
Right? We're monetized. But we can do. But Jack, just by watching YouTube videos, like, became like this, and not only painting, but pull out like something that you've created, like the landscapes and stuff.
I got all kinds of stuff. So, like, this is a dragon I painted.
Let's see here. Put that in front of me. I don't know if you guys see this, and I don't know if it carries over really well. But if you can see like the terrain on this, like Jack created that terrain. Jack, where's the one with the river or the waterfall? Is that here or is that your?
Oh yeah.
But all this terrain down here, Jack created. These come on blank bases.
Here's the waterfall I made.
So this entire piece here, entire piece, right? The landscape, the stones, like Jack made this. Can you believe that? He made it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, this is like my Bob Ross moment, I think. It's like something I do at the end of the day that I find relaxing. Just sit there behind the desk. And it is the gateway drug. I have like 200 acrylic paints now, and it's like, what have I done? Oh my God. But it is a relaxing hobby, and it's something that I enjoy rather than like, some people like to watch Netflix and kick back, Netflix and chill. I paint miniatures and chill. Throw on some music, and that's what I do at the end of the day.
I think most people, or a lot of people now are doing it, are Disneying and chilling.
And Marvel has their own channel.
Well, then that's Disney.
Oh, they own that too?
Disney.
Oh, really? Okay.
All the Marvel stuff is on Disney.
Interesting.
I'm on Annie's Disney channel. That's how I know.
Oh, you're one of those? I read like a whole article about that. You guys are sharing your passwords.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so all these people on YouTube are worried, like people doing models, anything that the federal government or Google says that this appeals to kids, or this is kids programming, is gonna be demonetized, or at least no advertisements. Not necessarily demonetized. Maybe they'll get view counts.
I mean, I think some of the panic is a little premature. I don't think it's quite going to be the apocalypse people are acting like it is. But I
don't YouTube it now that
I understand though, because it's like you spend all this time like creating your channel or whatever platform you're using, and then like they change the algorithm and like you're out of business.
Yeah. Well, I told you that YouTube has basically said that they have the right now to cancel channels that they don't think are commercially viable, which means that nothing was really commercially viable when YouTube first started. Like people would just create, and that's what built YouTube. And now that YouTube has all these media, BBC, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all these corporate
crap none of us want to watch.
Right, the crap why we're on YouTube, why we're watching YouTube to begin with. They're kind of telling. I have a prediction. I think in about 10 years, YouTube will go the way of MySpace. I think that, like MySpace is MySpace music now because people left it.
Well, you know what happens every time? Like, there was a time when Facebook was cool. And what happened? They went public and they got all these, like, banks in there and investment firms. And it's like squeeze blood from a stone.
Yeah.
They just, like, milk it for everything it's worth and just suck the life out of it.
Yeah. Well, that and people just, like, people want... I honestly think that, like, I hope that, like, the next social media platform, whatever it is, does not have... I think that being able to like a comment is one of the worst things in the world. I think that getting that kind of feedback, on talking about how shitty your life is, or on talking about how shitty the Republicans are, or how shitty the Democrats are. I think that getting that kind of feedback, it starts to train us subconsciously, and then we gear all of our activity on Facebook to getting likes.
Well, that's
what I mean.
I mean, it's the same with everything. I mean, it's all about getting little hearts and little likes,
and that's why I would hope that stuff goes away, so that now like people are just like
being themselves.
Yeah. I would rather look at pictures of your pets or what you cook for dinner tonight than your freaking political ideas.
Yes.
I don't go to a bar and listen to the person next to me yammering about politics. I don't want to do it on Facebook. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And from like dawn to dusk, it's like, you wake up, you look at your phone, and you scroll through there, and the first thing, the first thing, the last thing, and everything in between, it's all people and media competing for your attention. They're all trying to get you upset about something.
Right.
And it's just fucking exhausting. If you lay there for 5 minutes in bed when you wake up in the morning looking at your cell phone, you're like exhausted before you get out of bed. It's like, Jesus Christ.
I know. I mean, that's why I constantly have like over 99 notifications on my Facebook, because I get on it once every
Well, and also I've
weeks.
Probably muted half of my friends on Facebook.
I have to.
Because it's just like, dude, I don't need your alternative news websites and your conspiracy theory stuff. Like, okay, we we contain our conspiracy stuff about Jeffrey Epstein to 15 minutes on this show. Like, I don't need it all day, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I just don't like the dehumanizing factor. Like, there's a lot of, like, Republican ideas I don't agree with. There are a lot of Democrat ideas I don't believe in, or, agree with. But I don't think that any group of people, left or right, I don't think any group of people are evil. Now, now, with that being said, somebody go, well, the Nazis were evil. Well, the Nazis were doing really, really fucked up shit. But nobody in our country is doing something that fucked up. I mean, they're just not, And to pretend that anybody is,
it's pretty ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And to pretend that, somebody like Bernie Sanders would set up gulag, like he's a socialist, great. He's not he's not Lenin, and
You'll be saying that as they herd you into the FEMA camp, Dave.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, probably.
UN helicopters.
Yeah. So did you hear the latest about, I guess during the testimony it kind of came out that Hillary and the Ukraine were actually in cahoots trying to sabotage Trump during 2016. Like Ukraine backed Hillary, so they were trying to bring Trump down.
How so?
They were they colluded, or they attempted to dig up dirt on him. There were a couple things that they did. Like, it came out in testimony that that it was actually that they were actually trying to sink him.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary being who she is, I mean, she probably would have gone full-blown intervention in Ukraine. So I mean, it doesn't surprise me that they would have wanted to back her.
Well, and I'm sure I'm sure that she in some way or another let that be known.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, as I see all this stuff with Ukraine and all the little stuff unfolding in the background, it just reminds me of that line from House of Cards, where the female congresswoman, she tells Frank Underwood, one of his crazy ideas, and she's like, that's just short of treason. And he says something like, just short of treason is politics as usual.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is whether, people are now saying that there's nothing that's come up in these impeachment hearings that is treason. Whether you agree or disagree or whatever.
Well, I mean, treason, the thing about the impeachment hearings is Congress can, as I understand it, can impeach over whatever they want. It doesn't,
really? It doesn't have to be high crimes and misdemeanors?
I think they can impeach over just about whatever they want to. But an impeachment is different than a criminal proceeding.
I see.
Yeah, they would be two separate things.
I see.
But nonetheless, I mean, I know people have been asking, us to weigh in on it, and I know we talked about it a little bit today. I've avoided weighing in on it because I think to some extent it's like the Kavanaugh hearings. I can read everything that's out there about Kavanaugh or everything out there about this Vindman guy, the lieutenant colonel in Ukraine, and I'm still not going to know the truth. I don't have any special inside sources on these subjects, so I can just I see what the rest of you guys are seeing. And I mean, frankly, I think it's all a lot of hoopla, and I think it's fucked up that our government is stirring up the entire country into a fever pitch over something that I don't think they're going to have much to show for it. I think the Russiagate investigation, that they get us all upset, they get us all at each other's throats, and then nothing fucking comes of it. I think that if that's the case, if the Democrats can show that there really was quid pro quo, there really was some criminal shit going on, then okay, I accept that. But if you're gonna stir all this shit up a second time, you had better have something to show for it. Otherwise, shame on them for going down this road.
Right. Well, I think that there are some people that are what's the Judicial Watch? Mm-hmm. Is it Tom Filson or?
I'm not sure who's behind Judicial Watch right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're more of a right wing, but they FOIA a lot of documents and stuff like that. Yeah.
I mean, I think they're kind of coming out and saying this whole thing is they're just trying to slow down the process of the FBI's investigation into into, or the government's investigation into Spygate, into the whole, how did, the whole Christopher Steele dossier, and how did all this stuff start? Who's responsible? Is it, did Obama know about it? Did Hillary know about it? It's just, I don't know. It's interesting to see all this put on display because it shows why Trump and why Sanders were so...
Because people are so disgusted.
Yeah, were so popular in the last election cycle because people are tired of what happens here, of this, whether you're on the right or the left. Because the right had their moment with Bill Clinton.
There was an interesting article in the New York Times yesterday about people tuning out and talking about there's just so much BS and it has spread so much distrust with people. Like I was saying, people are exhausted. Yeah. People are also distrustful. Yeah. Because one guy brought up the media is super biased. They reported on Trump getting booed at what was it, Yankee Stadium, and then he went to another stadium a week later and got cheered. Yeah. But the press only reported on one of those incidents. Right. And he's like, I don't really trust what they're telling me. He's like, they're not lying to us, but they're biased. They're providing one side of it.
But see, have you? I'm sure you've been involved with things that were covered in the media, right? Like during your time in the military.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I've been, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 different events. Like one, I think I told you the whole story. I probably have told this on the stream, I think, about at Guantanamo Bay, during the interrogation.
Oh, and the hunger strikes?
The hunger strikes, transporting the detainees, because they had to do the shuffle walk. They had to do the shuffle walk from the cells to the interrogation booths. And so the camp commandant was run by Marines, I think, and the camp commandant was like, well, let's see if we can help these guys out, make it easier. So they experiment with golf carts because it was just laid
you load them on a dolly like Hannibal Lecter.
Well, that was one thing they did do, but they weren't doing it. They were doing it because it would be easier on those guys moving back and forth.
Because they're in irons.
Yeah. So the media takes photos of that, and they're like, the detainees are being beaten so badly that they can't even walk. That they're being, and it's like that. That's not how that works. I remember during the Jessica Lynch raid, media channels, both left and right, media channels were coming out and saying that they've heard reports that the troops were using blank adapters, and might be a hoax. It might be a false raid.
I vaguely remember some of those stories.
Because the bad guys put that out. Oh no, that didn't really happen. She was in a hospital, she was just turned over. But then the American media picked it up and ran it well, it might be true. We don't know. It's well, nobody who's on the raid's going to tell you. That's just dumb, And I think that celebrities go through this a lot too. The media is going to report what they want, especially when they want a scoop.
Well, you're right. There's that in the sense that they're going to want to break news, and sometimes they get ahead of themselves. But also, some journalists just don't know how to distinguish between a reliable source and an unreliable.
Well, that's because they're teaching gender studies instead of journalism. They're not teaching journalism anymore. They're teaching basically activism.
There's plenty of that out there. I'll give you an example. I don't think I've talked about this before. There was a guy, a private, and not in my platoon, but in the other sister platoon in my company, and our 2 platoons were deployed to Mosul, Iraq in 2005. And so each platoon was doing 24 hours on, 24 hours off. So we were alternating. We did a lot of operations, but the op tempo was very high. So this guy, this private in this platoon, this was maybe this was 5 years ago. I had a journalist approach me and say Jack, does this sound what do you think about this? And this kid was telling this journalist that we were executing women and children on target, that we were just lining up civilians and executing them. And he told, this is almost a verbatim quote. He said, we got to kill the women because they breed them, and we got to kill the children because they become them. Meaning terrorists. He actually told this to a journalist. And like, I was on some of the targets he was talking about. And I knew very well what that platoon was doing. They knew what we were doing. And I was like, this is like a wholesale, like it's a whole cloth lie.
Yeah.
There's like no truth to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, some ugly shit did happen on that deployment, right? I'll be real about that. But like executions, no. Like that absolutely did not happen.
Yeah.
That was not what was going on out there.
Yeah.
But he was telling this journalist that, and thankfully he believed me when I told him. I was like, look, dude, that just didn't happen.
But see, and thankfully the journalist actually asked you, because I feel like now.
But you can see how. Let's say it was a different person. Let's say it's a young journalist who's 22 years old, and she hears this and she thinks it's reliable, or he thinks it's reliable. And their editor should spot check it and say, "Hey, you need to double or triple source. Like this is a big deal." But sometimes they fuck it up.
Well, I just feel like there are very few true journalists left. I feel like most journalists, whether on the left or the right or whatever, are advocates, right? They're activists.
No, man, there are a ton of real journalists out there. You just don't know who they are because they're not the prominent voices. They're not the activists or the loud ones. They're the ones you hear from.
Well, maybe they're the ones that get hired,
That too, because the reason why is because the news outlets want clicks.
Yeah.
And that sort of activism brings in the clicks, right? Somebody who is more conservative in their speech, not their politics, who just sort of more cautious in the claims they're making, is not going to bring in the clicks. You can't really make a career out of saying, hey, pump the brakes a moment, like this isn't a big deal as you think it is, or this isn't quite the scandal you think it is. There's no career in that.
Right.
there just isn't.
Well, the other thing is, I understand that as a journalist, like you want the scoop. You want the scoop. So if a story breaks, or if it seems to be breaking, they're grabbing it and they're running with it so they can be the first ones out there. But it reminds me of the whole, who is that? What's the name of that kid? The one with the smirk?
Pharma Bro?
Huh?
The Pharma Bro?
Pharma Bro. No. The kid who's like suing the Post and...
you're talking about
DC.
The Covington...
The Covington kids. Like the story, like the media just ran with a story that wasn't even close to the truth in that.
And they didn't bother
doing research or anything. And so you had this kid who was in fear for his life, his family was in fear, because the media just spread a lie about him.
Yeah, because he was a dumb 16-year-old kid wearing a red hat, smiling. Yeah. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make you a criminal.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, hey, Nolan, I have seen The Mandalorian, and it's freaking awesome. Have you watched it?
No.
Oh, my God, man.
I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I'll still watch a Star Wars movie.
The Mandalorian is good. It's a space western, so like you don't have to be.
The last couple Star Wars films were like a big turnoff to me.
No. Yeah, actually, I can't even talk about the last couple of Star Wars films because
But this TV show is good.
Very good.
Really.
Very good. It is. Cool. It's a lot of fun. It's just. It's just really, it's well written. The dialogue is funny. It's got good action. It's just a fun show. It's well done, I think.
Cool.
I was really surprised. Because Star Wars, aside from Rogue One, Star Wars has not been. Like I hate Star Wars. Star Wars is like. Killed my... I don't hate Star Wars, but I hate the new Star Wars. It's like killed my childhood.
Yeah.
Like I went to go see Star Wars in the theater with my dad. Like I still remember, you know what I mean? Like, and Luke and Han Solo and Princess Leia and like, they were always such like, big characters to me. And it was such a mythic kind of journey, and the new Star Wars has just destroyed that. It destroyed all of it.
I mean, those prequels look pretty good now by comparison.
Right?
You know?
That's sad. It's sad when the prequels are suddenly...
they were pretty good.
The good old days,
Yeah, they were alright, you know?
But no, The Mandalorian, I highly recommend.
Cool. No, I'm glad to hear it.
And I guess they're doing another Ghostbusters, but they're doing it with the original cast, which I guess has a lot of people very much up in arms.
Because they're bringing back Dan Aykroyd and all of them?
Because they're bringing back, all the living cast
Bill
members.
Murray.
They're bringing all them back instead of giving the last cast.
Dude, I mean, that last Ghostbusters movie was just atrocious. I mean, it was horrible. I watched it on...
Well, you're a sexist then.
It's like...
The only reason you don't like it is because they were women.
It was just a bad movie.
No, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a bad movie if it's all women. It can't happen.
It could have been a good movie with a female cast. It just wasn't. It was just a shit movie, you know?
Yeah. Let's see here. What do we got going on here?
So that's a good segue there. And then okay, so sorry to even bring it up because I feel like this subject has been beaten to death, but it's like such a soap opera that keeps going on and on. Is Eddie Gallagher's SEAL Trident. So he, really quick recap. He went to court-martial, accused of war crimes, shooting some civilians, murdering a teenager with a knife, and he was acquitted. So a jury of his peers acquitted him of those charges. There was insufficient evidence from their point of view. They did convict him on one count of posing with a dead body for a trophy photo. So the Navy demoted him they busted him down one pay grade. Trump intervenes, restores his rank.
Right.
That was just that's our last show.
Right. Yeah.
That's how fast this thing's going. So then the Navy had been looking for a long time at revoking his trident.
Right. So
for those of you who don't know, the trident we're referring to is the actual it's a pin.
Yeah.
It's a eagle with holding a flintlock pistol and a trident, and there's an anchor there, and that is the Navy SEAL insignia. So I mean, it's symbolic of a lot for any SEAL. I mean, you go through a hell of a lot of training, buds, and everything else.
Yeah.
So revoking a trident is stripping you of your identity. It's like a form of social shaming.
Yeah.
You're ostracizing that person. You're no longer welcome.
You're basically taking away their achievement, their accomplishments.
So I mean, it's even worse than busting. I mean, I think. I don't want to speak for any Navy SEAL out there, but I think they'd rather be busted down a pay grade than lose their trident.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
When you were in Ranger Battalion, would you have rather have been busted down a pay grade or RFS'd?
Oh, you can take my rank.
Exactly. RFS is release for standard. So if you go out and get in a fight and you're drunk, they'll kick you out of Ranger Battalion because they don't want brigands and hooligans. Hooligans and brigands.
Yeah, if you take my rank, what does that mean? I just get more team leader time?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Right.
Say in SF, what does that mean? I get to be a 18 Bravo for a few more years?
Right.
Sounds great.
But I'd rather be a Tab D4 in battalion than a...
Yeah.
Than
a Tab D4 saw gunner.
Yeah, than a sergeant major in a lady, in a conventional unit.
So... The Navy, from what I've read about it, Admiral Green, who's in charge of naval special warfare, was looking at stripping him of his trident basically from the beginning of this scandal, but didn't because it would seem prejudicial during a court-martial. So then all this other stuff is going on. They kind of deferred on it, but still because of what they saw, the Navy saw, NSW saw as conduct unbecoming of a SEAL, they were going to take his trident. So from what I've read, this was actually a New York Times article, Admiral Green did not want to clash with the White House. So he was basically putting the feelers up to the White House to say, are you opposed to this or not? And he didn't get any pushback from it. So finally, just yesterday, he signed the paperwork to revoke Gallagher's trident and 2 or 3 other guys in the platoon. The PL and one other guy, maybe the XO.
Yeah.
So... signs the paperwork. This morning, 8 a.m., Trump tweets, no, Gallagher's trident will not be revoked. And so, like, as far as this stuff, like the orders, Trump tweeting about the Trident, restoring his rank, Trump is the commander-in-chief. So, like, legally, he is the final arbiter in matters of the military.
Right.
So he can do stuff like that.
Right.
So that's the latest development in the soap opera.
Yeah.
And
it's very possible that even though they were sending feelers to the White House, that Trump never got any.
Possible.
You know,
That's,
I didn't make it to Trump.
I thought about that as well. I mean, that's quite possible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the evidence is that they have. I don't know what.
Well, think about it like this too, and I mean, maybe this sounds unfair when it's like making an example out of somebody, but NSW has had scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal, and Admiral Green and the rest of the leadership at Naval Special Warfare are like under the microscope right now. Like, you need to discipline your troops and crack down on this shit. So like they've instituted like uniform inspections and made them all get haircuts, like trying to take them back to the old school to bring some discipline into the ranks. So I think you have to see the big picture that Gallagher is in the middle of that. And maybe he is being made an example of unfairly. That's one point of view. You know, I accept you could make that argument. You know.
See, here's the thing: is when you say they're going old school with them, I think one of the biggest challenges with naval special warfare is there is no old school with them in the sense it's
the Navy.
It's the Navy, right? When they enlisted, a lot of them enlisted, didn't spend it, and went straight into buds. So they've had sort of this. They've had this life. I mean, if you really want
to, it's a pirate ship. It's always been a pirate ship.
If you really want to discipline SEALs, if you really want to like make them suffer, send them out the Fleet Marine Force. Send them out the Fleet Marine Force.
Well, that is
and give them over to give them over
to the fleet,
to a gunny. Give them over to the Fleet Marine, not to the Navy.
That is the old school. The SEAL platoons used to go out with fleet.
Right. Well, no, they do, but they still
don't anymore.
They used to, so they had forward operational capabilities. But they weren't. What I mean, I don't mean send them out to the fleet. I mean send them out to Fleet Marine Force. Put them underneath the gunnery sergeant. Because I think a lot of times SEALs don't understand like how they're like PJs or they're like.
The SEALs have they have weak leadership. They have a weak officer corps. They've always had a weak officer corps.
Well, and it's also when I say they're like PJs or like CCT, I don't mean anything negative about that towards the SEALs or towards CCT or PJs. I just mean that they get a lot right up front. They get, and they don't live under a lot of military discipline. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They don't go through the whole military discipline thing, to the degree that like somebody who's made it to Delta has, or somebody, or what you have in Ranger Battalion, or what you have in the Marines, and then go to Force Recon with. That's all I'm saying. Is they don't have the foundation of the military discipline because they kind of have a civilian job in a way. You know what I mean? They're under UCMJ, but they're not out there drilling ceremony, stuff like that. So that's that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. So I think if you want to punish them, you put them back into like the military mode. You give them to a gunny, and say, okay, you guys are going to operate,
It'll be interesting to see, how it all shapes out over a longer period of time. Because as I said, these scandals are going to keep coming and coming. And, rightly or wrongly, what you think about it with President Trump, with him intervening, micromanaging down to this level, it's going to make commanders reluctant to discipline their troops, I think. It's going to make them question, like, okay, if I charge this guy who did something wrong, is the president going to intervene?
Yeah, but if the president does, the president does. I mean, there are so many UCMJ actions going on, on a daily basis. I don't think Trump's getting the wins. I think that it's just these were national level.
Even think about how Army officers are, like how scared they are. They're scared of their own shadow.
Yeah.
They're so scared of their career getting crushed. You think they're gonna risk going head to head with the president of the United States?
No,
fucking way.
No.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. Admiral Green, I mean, love him or hate him, I mean, he showed some balls there in taking that risk.
But I'm wondering, did Admiral Green suffer any consequences?
We don't know. This all just happened today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen to him.
But is that true? But
And Gallagher and his lawyer filed an IG complaint against him.
Against Green?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
For making disparaging remarks about the president, allegedly. Yeah. But I mean, I think all this is also like so emblematic of the SEALs. So the other guys on SEAL Team 7 that were Gallagher's command shed up above him, the team commander and XO and command master chief, they got relieved not that long ago because another team from SEAL Team 7, they sent them home from Mosul. You remember there was a alleged sex assault, drinking, everything. So they relieved the command team. Did the command team the command sergeant major of Special Forces Command or the command sergeant major of the 75th Ranger Regiment gets relieved, which I've seen happen. They go quiet. They quietly retire and just disappear.
Yeah.
These guys in the SEAL teams, no. They lawyer up. They start filing IG complaints. They start taking legal action. They go to the press.
Yeah.
It's like it's the Navy SEAL thing to do. And I think you're going to see more. Again, these scandals are going to keep coming and coming and coming. And now there's this template in place. You lawyer up. You challenge. You start up an Instagram account, you build a following, you try to get the president's attention. There's like this sort of model that's being built on how you can challenge it and how you can build yourself. Maybe, I mean, it builds up into a book deal and maybe you become a Fox News pundit, I don't know. But I mean, it's going to turn into, it already is a 3-ring circus. And my point is, it's going to get worse. I mean, maybe it's a 1-ring circus and it's going to turn into 3 rings in the coming years.
Yeah.
Swole Thor, thank you for your humble contribution to the stream. I appreciate it, man. So the other thing I wanted to say about
go ahead. You want to catch my questions, or what do you want to do?
Well, let me just finish my thought about let's set the specifics of Gallagher and the other guys who were pardoned aside for one moment.
Yeah.
I just want to make like more of maybe like a philosophical argument about war crimes. Two things I want to point out. First off, I am kind of disgusted about how there is this sort of like movement I see of people worshiping accused war criminals, like these brave patriots, these war fighters. There are Medal of Honor recipients out there, some of whom are Navy SEALs, some of them are Green Berets, some of them are there's one Ranger, there's a bunch of conventional infantry guys. Thank you, Alex. Who are Medal of Honor recipients, and they really did heroic actions overseas. So, I mean, I think if we're looking for people to admire, I think we can find some better people.
Sure.
Worthy of our attention.
Sure.
And worthy of putting up on a pedestal.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's definitely, since Vietnam, right? Since Vietnam, there has been a, sort of the hands off or kind of babying of veterans in certain aspects, because I think that there is such a collective guilt about the way they were treated then. That
thank you, Nightcap.
Are we getting? That's amazing. Thank you, guys. That's incredible. Veterans are not.
Some of us are dicks.
Yeah. But
some of us are good guys. Some of us are just humans, and we fuck up sometimes.
And the thing is that we served, but a lot of us also served for our own reasons. And not everybody went into it with 100% noble intentions. Some of us wanted the GI Bill. Some of us wanted to go to war.
I always say when people say thank you for your service, I mean, I kind of feel a little bad about it because honestly, I didn't do it for you. I did it because I wanted to do it.
Because you grew up,
Yeah, it was important to me personally, on a personal level. And if I did something to serve somebody else, I mean, that's cool. That's great. You know? But I always had that kind of selfish feeling inside. Like,
well, but I would also venture to say there's probably a strain of patriotism behind that.
Yeah,
that you did want to do something for your country.
For sure.
You know what I mean? I mean, we do it because we want to, because there's something in it.
But there are a lot of ways to be a patriot that don't involve.
And there are a lot of ways of serving people. None of us moved to Calcutta to work with Mother Teresa. Feeding. You know what I mean?
You don't have to go through all that ranger shit. Humping a rucksack up the Tennessee Valley Divide, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I don't know if you.
Thank you, Camo Steve.
Thanks, guys. You guys are incredible. We
will go back through and answer all your questions once.
We really appreciate it. But often a lot of times when you talk to a guy and they find out you're a veteran or whatever, sometimes if they're a civilian, they'll be like, oh, I thought about going to the military.
But, most people.
I think some people, some men in particular, don't know how I see them or are concerned with how I see them because they didn't serve. You know what I mean? And for me, it's like, man, it's not everybody's deal, and it doesn't make me a better person.
And it's a volunteer military.
It's a volunteer military.
It's not like you're a draft dodge.
Yeah, and it doesn't make me a better person because I did, because that's something that I wanted to do. It doesn't make me a better person than, so.
And you're kind of not really a good person if you're looking down on your fellow countrymen because they chose a different path in life.
Right. Right. It's just not for everybody.
Right. Especially what
accounting isn't for everybody. A medical career isn't for everybody. It's totally cool. The military should only have people in it that want to be in it.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't function.
Especially the units we serve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It wouldn't function without that, or it'd be very dysfunctional. But it is interesting. And I honestly think that because people are so it seems like everything is so left and right now in America, and it's not just I disagree with your ideas, but you're a shitty person because you have those ideas. That these people that come out in support of war criminals, either they believe that that the charges against them are trumped up, that the charges are not what they are, or they believe
that the military is just so sacred that you ought not to be doing this kind of just leave them the fuck alone and let them do their thing.
Right, or maybe they believe also this we have to defend against the left no matter what.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That kind of stuff drives me up the wall. You really think all these people in the military are just liberal pussies, and that's why. Is that why 9 people testified against Lawrence?
Right.
That was the big defense with the Gallagher trial, was that his fellow SEALs were a bunch of pansies. And I'm like, all of them?
Really?
Yeah. 4 or 5 of these guys were maybe, but I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if I buy that. But the other point I want to make with the war crime stuff was on what you're saying, building off of that, is that people say, finally we have a president who supports our troops. We're doing this to support the troops, right? These pardons, excusing war crimes, real, convicted or alleged, that this is what we're doing to support the troops. I would argue that it's not supporting the troops.
Yeah.
And the reason why I would make that argument, I'm going to give you an example. I have a friend who runs a charity for veterans. He does a lot of really good work, working with a lot of veterans. And he was telling me a story that I think will resonate with some of the other veterans out there because they've heard similar stories. He was telling me about some Marines, a Marine he was working with. And the Marine told them his platoon lost 9 people to suicide. His platoon alone. And he got into having a conversation with this guy. Why they can't, how could you guys let this happen that you had 9 of your men die of suicide? And he told him the story about how they went into a house in Iraq and they cleaned the place out. Just killed everyone. And he said, this is what we had to do, man. This is what we're supposed to. And he said, no, that was not your orders. No one told you to go in and just kill every man, woman, and child in that building. No one said that. You guys did that on your own. And so we, on one hand, we're like excusing these war crimes. We're making excuses. We're talking about supporting the troops. On the other hand, we're decrying that we lose 22 veterans a day to suicide. We're saying every day we have guys coming back with PTSD and TBI, and we have veteran homelessness. Uh-huh. We have this super big problem with veteran homelessness. We have this problem with substance abuse, with opioids, all of this kind of stuff. I'm asking people to take a step back and think. You think that these two issues are not fucking connected. Mm-hmm. That you think that these two issues, the war crimes, the things that soldiers either participated in or witnessed that should not have happened, you don't think that's not connected to the PTSD and the suicides and the homelessness and the substance abuse. These two things are intrinsically connected to one another. And we should not be supporting war crimes or other sorts of illegal activities. We are not supporting the soldier because those guys come home and they fucking smoke themselves because they can't live with what they did.
Well, okay, I agree with that. I would be careful though about like emphasizing that connection because I believe, now I don't know, I believe though that when you're talking about 22 suicides a day, I think if you emphasize that connection, then what it does is it makes everybody look at, oh well, all these people killing themselves were committing war crimes, and that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Because that's not. I don't believe.
No.
I don't believe that it's a common experience in Iraq or Afghanistan.
I don't either.
For people to experience a war crime. I think it's very. I hope that it's very isolated.
It's more common than people think, but absolutely, a lot of these guys who are coming home and having problems, I'm absolutely not trying to portray them as war criminals.
Or that they witness it. Like war itself is, you know what I mean?
But I'm asking people to consider that you're having a contradictory a worldview.
Yeah.
That you're trying to fight against the suicides, the homelessness, the substance abuse, but at the same time you're supporting the kind of things that lead people there.
Sure.
That these guys, the people who do participate in these things come into, I'm not a religious man, but what some people would call spiritual warfare. That you saw or you acted, you participated in something that you personally disagree with. That disagrees with your own identity and your own sense of right and wrong and your own personal sense of ethics. And that can lead to the suicide and the substance abuse
100%.
and the PTSD.
But so can like losing your buddy, losing your battle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
For me, there's already such a stigma on post-traumatic stress and, and veteran suicide and all these other things. Like, I agree with you.
And it happens for all sorts of different reasons. Some of veteran suicides has nothing to fucking do with combat.
Well, I would say that the vast majority of, a lot of veteran suicides have nothing to, I think the majority of veteran suicides have nothing to do with combat. I think because
there's some statistical evidence to allude to that a lot of these guys, like GWAT era veterans. So you got to break down that statistic a little bit. So like GWAT era veterans are killing.
GWAT is the Global War on Terror. So it starts on 9/11, 2001, and into
which is our generation,
right?
That our generation is killing themselves at about 1 to 1.5 of our generation of soldiers killing themselves per day. 22 a day encompasses all veterans. So a lot of these guys are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and there's all sorts of other data out there to point that like that's really like an at-risk population for suicide is men
over the age of 40.
Men.
Yeah.
A lot of guys who are, they served in Vietnam.
Yeah.
They're killing themselves 40, 50 years later.
Right.
Maybe PTSD plays into that in the war. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it has to do with all sorts of other things going on.
Well, and there is this real existential crisis, I think, after after you leave the military, if you were really involved in the military, because you come out and the civilian world is very different than the military in terms of like how you get on with people, how you get along with them. In the military, you know what your purpose is. In the civilian world, it's kind of wide open, and there are a lot of like social games you have to play in the civilian world that you don't play in the military. It can be a challenging world to navigate.
It's a culture shock.
Yeah,
it's a huge culture
shock.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about the 556 stuff or the?
Let's go back and look at some of the questions.
Okay, first off, for the super chats, are there any questions on the super chats?
Yeah, so let me go through here. Swole Thor says, "Keep this bad boy going." Thank you, sir. Alex Bennett, any news on the Pirates from last week? Actually, I didn't look at it. I'm sorry.
You
Alex.
caught me.
Yeah.
You caught me. I didn't look at it either.
Because I believe it was an Italian flagged vessel. Let me ask a few of my contacts in Italy about it.
All right.
I can do that.
I am so sorry. We said we'd do that, and I totally forgot about that.
Nightcap wants me to paint me like one of your French models, Jack. I can paint you like a Dungeons and Dragons rogue or bard. I can manage that. Okay.
And if they can be French.
Camo Steve says execute Order 66.
Which Order 66?
Isn't that from one of the Star Wars films?
Is it? Am I missing?
Where they kill all the Jedi?
Is that what that is?
I think it is.
Well, it was in the prequels, so I wouldn't I only watched the prequels once. That was enough. If somebody made a prequel that didn't have Jar Jar Binks in it, then I would watch it. It's just like I can only handle so much,
I'm just looking for other. Alex is asking me for the name of the charity. Man, I'm not gonna say, man, just because it's like kind of like I'm talking about people's privacy at that point. I'm not trying to I'm trying to use that as an example for something. Maybe somewhere down the line I can get that person. Actually, he doesn't really do interviews because he's more about he's the real deal. He's about keeping the focus on, helping out veterans.
Yeah.
He's not really about showboating what he does.
I'll tell you, along with what that Marine said, when I hear stuff like that, when somebody tells me that somebody, like some soldier, told them this, I'm always mildly skeptical.
You should be mildly skeptical
about somebody saying
But still, when 9 dudes commit suicide in one platoon.
If that's true, and I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just so
it happens. The suicides seem to happen it's almost viral. They happen in these rashes. Somebody does it, and then it gives permission to everyone else.
Suicide.
To check out.
Suicide is to me. And I used to talk about this a lot. I did some work with a friend of mine who is a doctor. He's a counselor, and we taught classes to psychiatrists, psychologists about it's the book I have. How to counsel people who have killed other people. But we work with people and I just lost my train of thought.
You're talking about going around giving classes and talking about how suicides can be
mimetic.
viral.
Okay, so mimetic. So one of the things that really used to piss me off was when the media was reporting every day on how many soldier suicides that is, because if you look, there's a case study about the Easter Islands where they've had their first kind of ever suicide at one point in time, and then all of a sudden it went wild. You'll see suicide within families. It is very much an idea that spreads, and that's the whole idea of a meme. A mimetic is this, a thought that is easily contagious or transferable, and or communicable, I guess. And suicide is one of those things, And so when the media would constantly put it on the screen, if a veteran were if they never even considered it gives you the idea. Yeah. And then if you keep, returning to that idea over and over,
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Yeah, 100%. So, did we get all the super chats, the questions there?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's look at some of the other stuff. Where we shot? Yes, activism, Nightcap. Matt, Firefly is hands down the best Western. I agree, 100%.
Firefly is really good.
Firefly is amazing. Serenity. It's funny because of deployments, I don't know when Firefly came out, but I know it was while I was deployed a lot. So I never saw it. I never heard of it. I actually saw Serenity before I ever saw Firefly. And Serenity is one of my favorite movies.
I like that movie too.
It's a phenomenal movie.
It's just a very well done action film.
Yeah.
And like I'm always like somebody is like a novelist. Like I write, I look at like movies and books where like, what's the perfect action movie?
Oh, and River Tam is such a badass. I mean, she's just so good. I mean, and
like, have you ever seen?
And Jane, right? Jane is the perfect chaotic neutral character.
He's the perfect like Army Ranger character.
He's chaotic neutral. Like anytime anybody goes, oh, what are the realignments like Jane's chaotic neutral, like just whatever. Anyway, I'm sorry.
There's another movie with Guy Pearce that did not do well, called Lockdown. Which is like another one, like it's just a very well done action film.
Really?
It like Serenity, it just like moves very quickly and kind of pulls you right through the film. I really enjoy that.
Sahara, we have not talked about the M4 replacement yet, but we can talk about that in just a second. Andrew likes Solo. Prosecutor key witness with Solo.
I don't know anything about the M4 replacement, to tell you the truth.
I can talk just a small bit about it.
Sure.
Also, Nolan just mentioned the Coast Guards, that we can talk about them.
Did you ever get to see people in the military or regiment using drugs, and how common is it? So, first off, steroid abuse is all over the place. I
wouldn't even call it abuse, honestly. Like,
it can turn into it.
I honestly think that steroids should be prescribed
I think under medical supervision.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I think that especially spec ops units,
so that people don't fuck themselves up.
Because steroids help with recovery. They help maintain muscle mass.
Yeah.
They increase performance when they're done right. When you cycle them right. When you you do the sort of the right estrogen block, things like that. Like they don't have long term, bad. Like they don't have like roid rage. They don't have all that stuff. So I really think that, steroids
I wish they would at least look at it and like study it.
Yeah.
And see like,
yeah,
is 100%. There a
100%.
way to integrate this?
But I never saw any drug use. Guys drink a lot. Guys drink a lot.
But see, also, I wasn't somebody who was into that kind of shit. So like, I wasn't going to get invited to those kind of parties anyway. But there were times where, again, like how it's like viral, there'd be like these little cocaine rings in Ranger Battalion.
Yeah.
And in Ranger Battalion, they piss test you religiously. Yeah. Like they will piss test you before a 4-day weekend, and you think you're free and clear. So like guys will go out and smoke some marijuana and come back from the 4-day, and they piss test you again.
So I'm not saying that like I never saw anybody get booted for drugs. But I never saw anybody use them.
I never saw like Rangers like lighting up crystal meth or something.
Yeah,
like
and I didn't like while I was there at least. I didn't see a lot of guys get kicked out for drugs. Like it was every once in a while.
I saw quite a few.
Did you?
Quite a few. There was there's one guy. There's one guy I knew got kicked out for cocaine, and he was a good soldier too. He was a good guy. So it's kind of sad in that sense. Like if he had cleaned up, he would have been good to go.
Yeah.
There's another guy. There's a guy who got RFS for marijuana, and he had the most awesome cover story.
Poppy seed? No, that's opiates.
No, so his story was, like Ranger barracks life, right, is out of control anyway. So he's living in the barracks. He said his team leader came into his barracks room, held a loaded .45 to his head, said, "Take a hit off this right fucking now or I'm going to shoot you." And so he took a hit. And so this was a story he told his chain of command. Yeah, that's why I pissed hot for marijuana. My team leader put a 1911 in my head. And I don't think that story was true at all. But, I love that. Like, who has the fucking balls
right.
to, like, tell their first sergeant.
Right.
It's like my team leader literally held the gun to my head.
Right. Wow. So what happened to him?
RFS.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Frank Bruno brought up the SEAL Team 6 and NSW trying to undermine John Chapman's MOH.
Yeah.
We can talk about that next show maybe, but that's
That's some dirty stuff.
If you guys have not seen, because they have this the surveillance bird, the ISR, intelligence surveillance reconnaissance bird. They have the footage of Chapman's actions during the actions that led to his Medal of Honor. That dude.
Hardcore. Yeah.
That dude.
Like down in like hand-to-hand combat with the enemy after he ran out of ammo.
That dude. I mean, I don't know. That's he had fight. He had fortitude.
Yeah.
He moved to contact. I mean, man, I had chills watching that guy. God bless him.
Yeah.
You know, but
dude, he went out like a samurai, man.
I mean, and there are, I think, at least one or two of the YouTube posts out there narrate or have like what after they, you know, what's going on. And there's a point where he was incapacitated. He was out.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah, he was out
because he'd already been shot.
He'd already been shot a couple times, a few times, and he was down, like incapacitated, unconscious. The SEALs called in for fire. You know, so he was in the middle of that barrage when they called for fire, when they called for air support. And then he just decided to wake up. He was done with his nap, and he started like smoking dudes again. And they say that the first time he went down, that he was mortally wounded at that point in time.
Right.
But he decided not to die until he got shot like right in the heart.
Fuck.
Man. A long while later, maybe after his handout. I can't remember, but it's amazing.
It's hardcore.
Yeah. Man, salute that guy. Actually, we should probably do some Lefroy now before we end the show.
I'm almost done here.
Let's see here. Let's see where we're at. My problem is the case he's only being charged because the Navy lost the first case and they don't like to lose.
Yeah, I understand that aspect. I mean, it seems like retaliation, you know.
Am I still pro-pirate? No, I'm not pro-pirate. I'm just...
Dave, why do you hate the troops?
I love the troops.
Why do you hate the troops, man?
Let's see here.
Guys talking about drug use. You know, Frank is saying, when I worked at the hospital at Fort Bragg, the 82nd used to bring in dudes who shot up heroin in their unit parking lot fairly regularly. Man, I believe it.
Yeah, the 82nd, I mean, they've got some great soldiers. They got some great troops, just like 10th Mountain. I mean, like 10th Mountain was hardcore during...
Yeah.
But, you know, everybody has their problems. You know, everybody has their issues, and... Especially the problem is, I mean, part of the 82nd's problem is where they're stationed at.
Yes.
You know, like...
It's a corrupting influence on a young man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. You start dating strippers.
Who does that? Kids these days.
All right.
Patrick is asking what you think of Vet TV, which is interesting that you bring that up, because I was actually pitching that to my editor about like maybe doing a story on Vet TV.
I don't know what Vet TV is.
It's Donnie O'Malley is the guy that runs it, and it's it is a online television channel for veterans, specifically geared towards veterans, and it's very much like barracks humor. Like
is it really?
Dark humor. Yeah, and like my thoughts.
Is it on YouTube or is it a separate channel?
No, it's a separate thing, I think.
I'll check it out.
I have mixed feelings about Vet TV, because on one hand, I think it celebrates some of the more shittier aspects of who we are, and like I was that private living in the Ranger Battalion barracks. Like I know that life. I'm not pretending like I'm above all that or something like that. I'm not. But I'm also saying that like I'm not 19 anymore. Like I grew up and I became a different person. And I think Vet TV kind of celebrates that, like being an 18-year-old living in the barracks doing stupid shit.
Yeah.
So I have some trepidation about that. But on the other hand, I think Vet TV is some of the realest shit I've seen about the entire fucking war. Anywhere.
You just reminded me, there was a movie made by a Marine Corps camera person And like apparently it was really like embarrassing or whatever to the Marine Corps, or not embarrassing necessarily. The command didn't like it because it was too real. And so they tried to stop the release. Like he was a Marine Corps journalist when he made it.
Usually a combat camera guy.
Yeah. And I guess it got made anyway and put out. Wow. So I'm gonna have to find out about that.
And you know, Donnie O'Malley is a guy I'd love to have on the show sometime, and we can talk about these subjects.
Yeah, I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Vet TV, yeah.
Oh, you know what you should check out if you guys haven't is Vice News did a story on Vet TV, and they sent this girl, this female journalist who looks like she's 15, sent her down to like Vet TV to their studio to hang out with O'Malley and his boys. And like the entire segment, she has this look of abject horror on her face. Like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing and hearing. Like just the like disgust on her face through the entire time. It makes the entire Vice News segment unintentionally funny.
Really?
And yeah, you have to go and watch it just because like you'll be cracking up just the expressions on her face as like Donnie is like walking her through stuff. And,
that's awesome.
Yeah. She just looks horrified by all of it. Fort Bragg surrounded with strip clubs. Really? I had not noticed that. During my time there.
Yeah.
You know they shut down Sharky's.
Did they really?
For real.
For what? Why? What happened?
I believe it. I don't know exactly. I'd have to ask again, but I think they just went out of business.
Sharky's
was a gentleman's club.
Yeah.
In the the greater Fort Bragg area. Ooh, Sharky's. And then there's Pure Titanium down the street from that. That place was rough.
Let's see here. Legalized steroids military only. Steroids, yeah. The battle near that.
In Oman?
You're talking about SAS. We should get somebody from the SAS on.
Yeah, well, I mean...
If you know somebody.
I know a few. They are... they're reluctant to talk publicly.
Yeah.
Especially the younger guys, because they all had to sign these like crazy British non-disclosure agreements.
Yeah. Nolan, it wasn't Restrepo. That's not the Marine movie I was thinking about. There's another one. Yeah, that's DJ. That's the one where it showed him using a makeshift bomb. Exactly.
Pure Titanium would be a great name for a gay bar. Man, the Pure Titanium. Outside Fort Campbell, there's a place called Cat West is the most well-known one, but there's another one, total dive down the street, called the Pink Pony. Yeah, and across from the Pink Pony. Was my favorite bar in the entire town, down in Clarksville. There's a Korean beauty shop, but down in the basement of it, at night, it would open up into a bar.
Like a speakeasy kind of type of thing? Or?
I think it was legal. But it's down in the basement, and it was called Sonny's. And you could go down there, and they had a karaoke machine, and you could sing K-pop songs on karaoke. And the ma, who worked the bar, the ma had this gnarly scar from ear to ear. Like someone had tried to do her in. Yeah, and you could get like a lukewarm can of Bud Light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a great place. I loved it there. We had my birthday there one year.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. You want to talk about the switching over from the M4? From the M16 M4 system?
Yeah, what do you know about it? Because I don't know anything.
I don't know a lot. Obviously, the M16, the M4, they've had a lot of issues. Well, not a lot, but 15% or 20%, and in a firefight is a lot when you're, when you're in an environment like Afghanistan or Iraq. And I think that's also been an issue of stopping power. With the M4, the 5.56 is just because it's Full Metal Jacket. It's a fast round, but it doesn't have a lot of stopping power.
It's moving very fast, and it's in a sense overstabilized.
Yeah.
Because it's the bullet is lighter, and because of the lands and grooves or rifling as you prefer, the bullet is like moving so fast, and it's so stable it like zips right through people.
Yeah, it doesn't, and it doesn't. It creates a certain amount of cavitation on it, but it's lacking in
unless you
force.
Unless you hit like the head or the spinal cord.
Yeah. So it lacks in stopping power. What we would call stopping power, and they can't really do anything to it because not the laws of land warfare, but
the NATO standard.
The NATO standard is it has to be a full metal jacket because you can't cause undue suffering.
The full metal jacket isn't really the issue, I don't think.
No, you're right. But what I'm saying is they can't modify the round anyway to make it more deadly.
Yeah, like hollow points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can't do that.
So I guess and then a lot of spec ops units for the M16 M4 issue. And the challenges they were having with the reliability of that, a lot of spec ops units went to the HK416 uppers, which are basically a Knights. They're basically like an M4 upper. They're modeled off an M4 upper.
They're just a gas piston.
Yeah, it's just in a shorter stroke. Yeah, or a shorter. Anyway, but I guess that there have been issues now that we've been in combat for a long time. They found issues with the ballistics, with the stopping power of the 5.56.
Well, the thing is, we could just all carry 7.62 again, right? You can do that, but the issue you get into with that is now you're carrying less ammunition.
It weighs more and it takes up a lot more space. Because I love like the M14.
Dude, I love the Scar.
Yeah,
I like the Scar right now.
But so now what they're talking about. I think that the Army they haven't decided on a weapon system yet, but they have decided they want to go to a 6.8 millimeter.
Wow.
Which has roughly, I believe, and I'm not a real big gun guy, so somebody who knows a lot about guns and.
I mean, like 6.8. I mean, it's like an old caliber, isn't it?
It's been around for a while.
I mean, like I think the Swiss rifles used to use 6.8 back in the day.
Could be. I'm not 100% certain. And again, like I'm not a big gun guy, so other people can talk to this issue a lot more intelligently.
I would have to research it a bit myself.
But I think it has roughly the same velocity as it weighs more. Obviously, it has roughly the same velocity of a 5.56, but it has about 40% more stopping power, especially at like mid to long range. So
the caliber is decided.
Yeah, I believe so.
Interesting. Okay.
Now they're just trying to procure a weapon system. I know that SIG is one of the people. I'm not sure. There are a few people in the running for it, but not 1% certain what all the companies.
The Army acquisition system is such a shit show.
Well, I think though, I think that with this, I think this is coming more from. And I don't know for sure, but I think that this is coming more from like the spec ops side of the house and the Army marksmanship unit, and the Army marksmanship unit, they're shit hot. They are good.
Oh yeah.
They know what they're doing. So
I'm glad you said that. That gave me an idea. I know a dude who served he was a Ranger. He was a 275 Ranger. And he's actually from the same hometown as me. And he served in AMU for a long time.
Wait, what's his name?
Emil Praslick.
No, I don't know him. I know a couple other guys in AMU that would have been snipers.
He'll be somewhere in the area during the holidays, so maybe I could get him in here to talk. Like he is a very, very knowledgeable person.
Yeah.
Like he's the guy to talk to about this subject.
About that'd be great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Coast Guard.
Yeah, so the Coast Guard. Last month, the Coast Guard seized another narco sub out in the Pacific. And you guys probably remember over the summer, the video went pretty viral, a different incident seizing a different narco sub where, the Coast Guard guy like jumps onto the sub and starts banging on the hatch. Because the deal with that is they need to get in there pretty quickly because the smugglers can scuttle the boat very quickly by like pulling the plugs and just flooding the hold and just sink it. So they kind of need to like get in there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So then it was announced that they seized another one just last month. And so I kind of wrote an article about this, talking about the subs and the kind of the ins and outs, giving a little bit of additional details. So it kind of started around like the 90s as far as building subs. It used to be using cigarette boats, like speedboats, and small airplanes. And of course, as we start to crack down on one thing, these organizations evolve and they start doing something different. So the subs, they're little miniature subs, basically, 4-man crew normally, and they build them in the mangrove swamps on the Pacific side of Colombia, facing the Pacific Ocean. And the subs they're really semi-submersibles. They're not submarines, because a submarine would totally go underwater. Semi-submersibles, they just adjust the buoyancy of the boat so that the hull sinks and is like flush with the sea level.
Okay.
So that they can't be detected very easily. Really the only way is to, as I was reading up on it, is by air. So they'll even paint the top of the sub like dark blue to try to camouflage it. So they're very hard to find. But the subs do not make the trip to the United States to offload the drugs, cocaine in this case. That's not what's happening. That's never been the case. They will go up to Mexico, southern Mexico, and then they will offload the drugs onto boats, and then they will go over to land and be smuggled by Mexican drug cartels the rest of the way.
Okay.
So there's like some cooperation here between the Colombian drug cartels and the Mexican drug cartels.
Sure.
So that's been going on, and then I just got a little bit into the Coast Guard has these like paramilitary units that specialize in ship seizures, which not a lot of people are aware of, but they've been around since like the Coast Guard got involved in the war on drugs in like the 1970s.
Yeah.
And then they formed these units called TACLIT, they're tactical law enforcement teams.
Uh-huh.
And they were doing like interdictions in the Caribbean back as early as like 1982 or 83.
Yeah.
So now today they have 3 different units. The TACLET, they're still around. The Maritime Security Response Teams, MSRTs, are kind of, I guess they're probably like what they would say they're more elite unit. And they do ship seizures. They can do like the counter weapons of mass destruction, proliferation, all that kind of stuff. They say that you can do like hostage rescue and direct action, and I mean I don't know how realistic that is, but they are pretty good at what they do.
I mean, if they're an extremist, right? If you got nobody else, or whatever,
right.
You know.
As far as seizing ships goes, it seems like they're pretty good at this. Like, and that's I was reading about them how unlike Navy SEALs or Marines or something like that,
They specialize.
Yeah, they have one job.
Yeah.
Like this is your one job, so they're pretty good at it. They don't have to worry.
For now, and the only reason I say for now is because. Mission creep. Their commanders will start to try to get more and more, for more funding, more budgets, more, but and then
there's the Maritime Safety and Security Teams, MSSTs. So those are the 3 units that kind of do the interdictions.
Yeah.
So I was just writing a little bit about that and how this is interesting too, is that there was an operation, it's called Operation Blast Furnace, back in the 1980s that involved the DEA, the SEALs, Special Forces, and it was a counter-drug mission, which later this evolved into Snowcap, which was also mostly DEA-led, and it was across multiple countries. It was like Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, a couple other countries in Central America. And part of this mission included the Coast Guard going down to Bolivia and training riverine units, Bolivian riverine units to go and do counter-drug missions. So it's all an interesting history there, and there's a book actually about it. I think I've mentioned it before. It's called Not Your Father's Coast Guard, The Untold Story of U.S. Coast Guard Special Forces. And you can go pick up that book if you want. And it details a lot about this particular subject.
Well, it's interesting because, most people don't know this. Because, people always make fun of the Coast Guard, Department of Transportation,
it's interesting you bring that up. They're a branch of the military, per se.
Right.
But they're actually not under DOD. They're under the Department of Homeland Security.
Now they are. See, they used, before Department of Homeland Security was ever created, they were under Department of Transportation.
And the military can grab them up during war.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
They can be, So they're, in a way, I don't want to say they're like merchant marines, because merchant marines can actually be, pulled into that effort too, right? But the Coast Guard is a military organization, but they fell under the Department of Transportation because their mission was, focused towards that, I guess. But prior to 9/11, the Coast Guard was killing more people, more bad guys. They were killing more bad guys than anybody. You know, you could, like, you know, everybody always talked about, you know, Delta and Green Beret and Rangers and SEALs and stuff like that. But the Coast Guard were the ones getting all the action. You know, they were doing all these drug interdiction missions. You know,
The National Guard SF guys I talked to loved working with them because they're like, they have a very easy ROE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have. Yeah. Their ROEs are very clear. There's the U.S. Coast Guard. Shut down your engines. Come out. You know. Blah blah blah. Oh no. You know.
On a 50 cal across the bow.
Yeah.
And then just walk it in.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the boarding teams. You know, the interdiction. Yeah. They've always done a great job, and they don't get any. I don't get any credit.
Yeah, there's not a lot of fanfare.
They don't get any limelight. You know. But yeah, those guys have been hooking and jabbing for a long time, and way before, you know, everybody else got into before the GWAT.
Yeah, and because of that they can get pulled into military operations. The Coast Guard has also operated under CENTCOM in the Middle East. So, yeah, it's an interesting subject.
Yeah, I've known a couple, like when I went to dive school. There was a Coast Guard guy there. Because they, on every like cutter, they have like 2 divers. Because, you know, a cutter, the reason they're called a cutter is because they cut ice. Because they go through ice. They're supposed to be able to go through ice.
But they're not icebreakers.
I want to say that. Maybe that's not why they're called a cutter. I might be making that up. Yeah, but he was on a cutter, and he said the whole point was it like, and so these divers have to, you know, be able to go out and unfoul the ship or do, you know, maintenance, you know, like do stuff while. They're not going to do it, obviously, while the ship is underway. But the ship can't make it to like a port, you know, like a repair station, where they can do stuff like that. So they have to have guys on board that are dive qualified and can do something in an emergency situation. At least that's the way I understood it. But yeah, the Navy sends. I want to say it was 2nd class dive school, because it was commercial diver, not scuba divers.
I was also reading that the Coast Guard snipers have done pretty good in the international sniper competition.
Oh, really?
The last few years, yeah. Like, or maybe it was a Marine Corps competition because the big upset was like the Coast Guard upstaged the Marine Corps.
If you think about it, Coast Guard snipers potentially could be the best snipers out there because they fire under the most arduous circumstances.
It's also a question of again, like we were talking about with mission creep, like there are not. This sounds kind of weird to say, but there are a lot of like as far as dedicated snipers, like dedicated full-time snipers, there are not many out there. There are Marine Corps Scout snipers, and Ranger Regiment, and other than it's kind of hard to find a dedicated sniper section or dedicated.
So the conventional army doesn't have they don't have dedicated sniper sections that belong to like their MI section.
I bet they are trying to do that. I'm not 100% sure.
So when guys would go
but for the most part, even like JSOC guys, like they're snipers, but they're also recce guys.
Right.
You know, they have all these.
Same with SEALs. Their snipers are still. You know, they're not just snipers.
And that's why, like, at least I've never worked with them, but I've been told Canadian snipers are very good because the sniper spotters teams have been together for so long.
Yeah.
Unlike us, where like, you know, every deployment it seems like the platoon is completely reintegrated.
Yeah.
Or like reconstructed. That the Canadians have opportunities to like, you know, they've been working together for 10 years.
Oh, really?
No, that's what I was told.
Yeah. Yeah. So. No, that makes sense though, because I never really thought about the whole dedicated sniper thing where that's all you do every day, you know.
Yeah.
Because it's not that way in Special Forces.
No.
I don't think it's not that way in SEAL teams. Not the way in Delta. So Rangers, you're right, Marines. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, I'm sure like the conventional army would love to do that, and maybe they are.
Yeah, I don't know if like their snipers are part of the recce, if that's their thing.
Yeah, that's also gotten switched around. You remember like there was like Rista, they were like called squadrons. Oh man, it's just such a mess.
Well, see, things changed after I left regiment because when you were there, like we did not have recce teams at the battalion level?
One of the guys is saying that MTOs vary, the table of organization and equipment, but each battalion usually has a sniper section with the battalion scouts and HHC. That said, training time is at a premium when Army BS comes up. Well, yeah, that's true in every unit. But that's good to hear, actually, that the conventional military has kind of put an emphasis on that, of having like dedicated sniper sections. I mean, that's really the only way to do it right.
With what? With
To have a sniper section.
Yeah. I mean, you see. Here's the problem with that. I'm going to pour us a drink. Do we have glasses here, or are we using the cups?
Oh, we're getting gangster now.
Did you take the glasses?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, speaking of messes, this brings us into the other topic I wanted to bring up tonight. Is the word on the street is that Halo is falling out of favor in the Special Forces qualification course. That they're getting rid of it as part of the Q course. And this has been another one of those like Army nut rolls. So
when did Halo become? Because Halo didn't used to be part of the Q course.
Right.
So this is a relatively new development that it is.
Last 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
Maybe. Last 5 years perhaps. And I'm gonna.
Sorry, guys.
I'm gonna opine on this a little bit, on why I think Special Forces did this. So on paper, every Navy SEAL is. No, that's good, Dave. Thank you. That's more than adequate. On paper, every Navy SEAL is Halo qualified. The reality is that they would have this like very much abbreviated course where they'd go skydiving for like a couple jumps, and then on paper they're Halo qualified. So when the larger command, Special Operations Command, looks at Navy SEALs, they're like, whoa, every dude in this unit is dive and Halo qualified. And because
Whiskey Niner.
And because they're also bullshitting, they're like, oh, he's also, human qualified, he's also sniper qualified. Like on paper, the SEALs look like they're everything.
Their sniper course is good.
The SEAL sniper course?
Yeah, it's really good.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
But on paper, Special Forces, like they're like, how come you have like whole ODAs? They're not Halo or dive.
Right.
What the fuck?
Right.
So I think to compete, I think Special Forces wanted to get everyone Halo qualified.
Right.
Now let me explain why this is fucking dumb.
Yeah.
This is my rant for the night. Brace yourself. So Halo.
Happy 16th.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Dave. So Halo is a high altitude low opening or military free fall, which includes Halo and Hey Ho, high altitude high opening, is
as opposed to static line,
right,
which is basic airborne.
Right. Static line is for paratroopers.
Right.
Right. You're putting out like a company or a battalion of troops. I mean, you could put out a squad or a platoon like the Rhodesians used to do shit like that.
And you're also putting them out directly over the point where you want them to land.
Into the shit.
So, it's they have limited control over the parachute. It's, you can steer it, but you're not going far. And it's a low altitude drop. Because it's not done in sort of a covert or setting, it's very overt.
Like in combat, it's like 400 or 500 feet.
It's like because you don't want those guys in the air very long, getting shot at. So basically, for those combat jumps, a guy steps out of an airplane and his chute opens and he's on the ground. Basically, So anyway, so please go back and.
So on the other hand, military free fall is you're jumping from at least 12,000 feet is normal. You could jump up to 30,000 feet on oxygen because you get above 12,000 feet. You go above that, the air is so thin, there's so little oxygen in there, you go hypoxic. So now you need to be on oxygen.
Right.
But the point is, you're high enough that the aircraft is not seen or heard.
Right.
So you jump out of the aircraft, you can free fall and pull your ripcord at a lower altitude, come down to the drop zone. More likely, you do a high altitude, high opening. So you come out of the aircraft at 30,000 feet, immediately pull your ripcord, and now you're under canopy and you're steering. And
you can track like miles. You can
there are very advanced parachutes that have been developed more recently, and probably the exact distance, the forward travel is probably actually classified. But just common knowledge. You could travel 40 kilometers under canopy. So, for instance, you could jump out of a plane over, let's just say, Afghanistan and steer your parachute into Pakistan.
Right. So the purpose is, or one of the purposes is the plane never violates anybody's airspace.
It's a clandestine infiltration method.
Right. And it gets your team, whoever that might be, over the border, past all the checks, anything that they might need to avoid, and can insert them deep into hostile territory without a trace, basically.
Right. So it is a clandestine infiltration method. I was on a MFF team in Special Forces. I was not a Halo god, okay? I never went to Jump Master. I didn't go to any of the advanced courses or anything like that. So I'm not the Halo guru, okay? Just throw that out there. But I do know a little bit about it. The reason why sending every Special Forces student to the Halo course is stupid. It's dumb for two reasons. All right, first off, how many Halo jumps have been done during the War on Terror? All right, because we're very risk adverse. We have very risk adverse officers. The infiltration method is not used very often.
It's also, though, what are you actually infiltrating? You know what I mean? Like there aren't that many opportunities for it either, I think.
There are I think more than we would like to think, because you could use it to hit objectives in Afghanistan or Iraq, to gain that element of surprise. I think we were talking about on the last stream. If you're in Afghanistan, they see those Humvees coming from a mile, like more than a mile away.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're doing a hit on a target, how many guys are you gonna halo into an objective?
Well, I want to get into that particular topic also. Because JSOC has looked at and has trained to jump an entire squadron. SF teams operate as 12-man elements normally. Right. Okay, but back to the point that there have been very few Halo jumps. So RRD, the Ranger Reconnaissance Detachment, has done, I'm sure the exact number is classified, but there's been like 3 that have been publicly announced. Yeah. Right. You can go and read that on Wikipedia.
And if you don't know anything about RD, the Regimental Reconnaissance Detachment, you should check them out.
They're really good at what they do.
They are phenomenal at what they do. They are, honestly, I'm surprised that, they are top-notch professionals. And I'm surprised. They're so good at their job that basically they were pulled away from the Ranger Regiment in a way and made just a national level strategic resource, which is why the Ranger battalions had to stand up their own recce units. Mm-hmm. They are just really good at their job.
They are the modern day LRPs.
Yeah.
6 dudes out there recceing an objective. And the RRD book, I hope it comes one day. I hope some of the guys write a book about it. It's super cool. So RRD did some jumps. JSOC did some jumps that are not publicly announced, especially early on in the war. I believe 10th Group, I think an ODA from 10th Group did a Halo jump in Iraq.
Because they had to, or because they could?
Maybe because they could.
Yeah.
But at any rate, they did one.
I don't begrudge them.
So there have been very few jumps. I think that the infiltration technique should be used more. For instance, there's complications. Like I was talking to one guy who his squadron, or was it a troop or a squadron-sized operation? I can't remember. But it was in Afghanistan. JSOC element talking about that they were all going to free fall into, use the MFF infiltration technique to get to the target. And it was like some valley in Afghanistan. And the operation kept getting stood up and stood down, and they all got super pissed off about it. But they were looking at it like it's so windy in these mountains of Afghanistan. They were looking at it and they're like, if we jump, we're going to have the troop spread out all across this valley, and it's just not worth it.
And it's such a high risk landing, even if the winds were great.
Because the terrain.
Because of the training. If you get a guy on a jump with a broken leg, the mission, what happens now? So
yeah. And then it becomes the target. It becomes the issue of, okay, you haloed in, but you can't halo out.
Right.
So how the fuck are you getting out of here?
Spy rig.
It could be that, it could be just helicopters coming in to get you.
Yeah.
It could be a number of different things, but you have to plan for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no support there for you once you're on the ground.
Right. 100%.
SEAL Team 6, they did a Halo infill in Somalia. I think they've done a few other combat Halo jumps over the years, but through the whole war on terror, very few times has this infiltration technique been used.
Yeah.
That's one reason why, if we don't use it, why the fuck are we going to train every swinging dick to do this?
Yeah.
Now, the other reason is because special forces, in general, it's a clandestine infiltration technique. Special forces is designed to work as 12-man teams.
Right.
That is the maneuver element. They're designed for unconventional warfare. So you have guys who are combat divers, and they can use that as a clandestine infiltration technique. You have other teams that are Halo. But what's the point of training an entire battalion or an entire group to conduct Halo? You are never going to infill the entire battalion by Halo. That defeats the purpose of a clandestine infiltration technique. Furthermore, in a real life scenario, you're probably going to have some teams that are going to static line in. You have some teams that will Halo in. You have some teams that are going to go in, a 10th group went into Iraq. They're going to be in just normal civilian vehicles and like pull a tarp over themselves. You're going to have a variety of different infiltration techniques. You're not going to Halo in an entire SF battalion. It's absurd. So yeah, it all just gets ridiculous, and it's also quite difficult to maintain. Now again, if you do this, you have every guy on paper Halo qualified, but just like being a sniper or a medic or anything else,
it's a perishable skill.
It's a perishable skill. So there's a lot more to Halo than there is to just skydiving.
Right.
You can't just go out on the weekend and skydive and think you're Halo qualified.
Right.
MFF is something different.
Right.
You have to be proficient in jumping with all of your combat gear on.
Yeah.
So you got your parachute, your reserve is part of the parachute. You got your helmet, you got your rucksack, you got your weapon, you got your oxygen tank, and you jump at night. And now as the technique has gotten more advanced, which is a good thing, they've continued to develop it, the guys are wearing nods at night. So they're steering their canopy under nods. They're doing all of these different things that are making it more and more advanced. But all that stuff has to be practiced. You have to train on it. And there just aren't enough resources to keep all of an entire SF group proficient on Halo.
Right.
Because you have to have the aircraft, you have to have the parachutes, you have to have the training time, all of that. Another thing my friend was telling, my friend who was an instructor at the MFF course was like, this gets into a thing like we're chasing our tails because we're trying to create more MFF students, but we don't have enough instructors to support it. So we need to create more MFF candidates so that we will have more instructors to train the increased number of troops coming through our course. So he's like, we're just chasing our tails here.
Now, I would say though that because that Halo being part of that, like Halo. So I would say that I think a valid argument for making everybody in SF Halo qualified is that you will have your Halo teams that stay up on their walls and do that. But in sort of an emergency situation, let's say we go to war, and this particular war requires us to get seven teams at different strategic points across the border to link up with partisans or guerrillas or whatever else. Even if these guys are not like great at it, they have a foundation where you don't have to start from scratch, and then you could do a rapid train up, to get them there.
That was one of the things that was talked about actually at one point, was having Halo static line jumps. So a way to like shake and bake and bake Halo jumpers is that it would be like a static line Halo jump that they would be hooked up.
Right.
They would jump out of the plane,
and then
their chute would just be pulled out by the static line and the deployment bag and all that good shit.
And then they would go under a Halo canopy.
Now they're under canopy. And they would just have to know how to guide their parachute, follow the jump master. Because when you're doing the Halo jump, the high altitude, high opening, the jump master is going to have, it was called, back in the day, it was a nav board. And it was just literally like a compass and like a 1/50,000 map, and he was just guiding you to the drop zone because you're so high you can't see the damn thing, right? You're literally going through the clouds. Nowadays it's like mini computers, tablets, and stuff like that. It's all high tech. But But so you need to follow your jump master down to the drop zone.
Yeah. 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 So, but they got rid of it then.
Apparently, they're going to get rid of it if they haven't already. And I mean, I guess I'm sure it was a good recruitment tool for SF. You know, all these kids that are like, "Oh, we're getting Halo qualified."
Well, that was the thing with PJ, because I don't think SEALs were always all Halo qualified either. I think that's because it used to be, that was the thing with PJs and CCT, that was like not the one cool thing, because both of those groups are phenomenal at their jobs. Both CC,
and when I asked them about it, when I asked PJs about it, and I was like, why do you have to be Halo and dive qualified? I guess Halo you can kind of understand, like they might have to jump in to perform a rescue, like maybe, right?
Yeah.
But like, why do you have to be dive qualified? And they told me the reason why is so we can recover bodies. And I was like, okay, but why do you need to go to the combat diver course? Like, we have all kinds of, we have Army divers, we have Navy divers. Like, why?
It's there for, I think that they did it because they could, you know, like, because it's a small community.
Yeah.
And the other thing is because PJs work with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's
so
not, there's not like a PJ unit,
yeah.
right? It's not like a team of PJs go out and do stuff. PJs are pararescue, which are, and CCT are combat combat controllers. And they're the Air Force kind of soft. The PJs are you know, like shit hot medics, and the CCT guys are, you know, the air controllers, combat controllers. Basically, they call in aircrafts, the airstrikes. They do a lot of stuff.
They control air.
They control air. So, like, if you do an airfield seizure, the combat controllers can set up to land the aircraft, you know, the allied aircraft and stuff like that. Both of them are very, very good at their job. They go through a lot of training, both of them.
Yeah.
And both Halo and Combat Diver are part of their pipelines. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure it used to be that they were the only soft guys. They were the only soft people who, in their initial training pipeline,
got both.
And I don't mean like Delta or SEAL Team 6 because they're like, that's a matured unit.
In Delta, they're getting Halo, but they're not all combat diver.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Really, they're only going to get that if they came with it from SF or maybe, I mean, if there's time, those guys can go to that school.
Yeah. So, and one of the things about them is I think they have to be able to work with everybody.
I think RRD was both.
I'm pretty sure RRD was both. Yeah, I think you're right.
At least back in the day, they were.
Yeah. But see, I think about it as
they're a recce unit, so that makes sense.
But see, here's the thing: that when I say sort of Delta's a mature unit or SEAL Team 6 a mature unit is PJs and CCT were the only units that you could go into the military without having been anywhere else and go straight
all of that training
and get get Halo and get scuba
the most absurd. Like when I went to the MFF course. There were parachute riggers there. I got that, right? They have to know what the hell they're doing,
sure,
right? And that should be a part of their training. Like they're living it. They're not just, you know, like packing your chute and they have no idea how it's used.
Right.
I get that. But then there was Air Force SEER guys there, like Air Force SEER instructors, like E5s and stuff. I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? And the guy told me, he's like, we have to learn how to free fall so that we can teach pilots how to free fall when they eject from their aircraft. I was like, okay.
Wait, pilots don't free fall when they eject from their aircraft, though. I see what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I see what he's doing.
And see, here's the thing is that...
Dude, you can't hate somebody getting over, though.
Oh, yeah, but all that stuff, like you have MFF teams like ODAs, Halo teams in SF, where it's very hard for them to get slots.
They're waiting for slots for a long time.
Yeah, because, and the reason for that is because you have all PJs and SEALs had it in their pipeline, so they had priority.
Yeah.
And that would keep guys who are on actual MFF ODAs from getting the Halo slot.
Yeah.
Now, I think SEALs created their own school entirely, so I don't think they go there anymore. But that was a big conundrum back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see if we got any JTF2 and 2 is each battalion has snipers. Okay, that's back. Let's see here.
With the unit and DevGru developing their own AFOs, the activity is still needed. Well, I mean, they do different types of operations. They also, I mean, they all do tactical intelligence. But I get what you're saying. You know, there's a significant amount of overlap, and maybe that will be rolled back at some point. But I think just there's been so much work during the last 20 years.
What was the question again?
Well, he's saying that like all these JSOC units have their own recce elements, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Then why do we have a unit like TFO that also does recce? And I think it's just there's so much work to go around.
Well, they have a mission that nobody else is doing. So they have a mission that nobody else is doing.
But there's still some overlap in the sense that they're all doing tactical intelligence.
Well, there's overlap.
Yeah.
But they still have mission elements that nobody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it comes down to it comes down to sort of specialization. So like if you consider Delta like the premier, at least what they once were, like them and the FBI, like if you consider Delta the premier hostage rescue force,
mm-hmm.
right? Before the war, before the GWAT, but that was their thing, to storm an aircraft that was taken over by by bad guys, and being able to engage the enemy without hitting innocent people, right? You could say that there are a lot of other people doing CQB,
right?
But there wasn't anybody else who did that, right? So, and I would probably say the same thing about SEAL Team 6 when it comes to naval interdiction, shipboard, that when they are at their prime doing that, now they're not really doing, neither one of those units are doing like that thing so much now because there's so much more going on, that you could, you have other people who can take down a ship or whatever, but, not to that level. There are other units out there, other units in JSOC or, other task force or whatever, that have missions that nobody else does and nobody else, can do without the extensive, the reason that Delta could do that is because they had a 6-month or whatever operator training course that focused on that. You can't get that through a 4-week course and then, and whatever, that level of dynamic shooting, precision, in confined spaces in different settings, like you can't replicate that just by constantly going out on combat operations.
Right.
So just like they have their thing, other units have things that they do that nobody else can do without that extended training course. And so it's not, so anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, they all have somewhat unique missions.
Yeah.
When the CIA conducts missions overseas, do they scoop up special operations guys from every branch, or do they only work with Tier 1 units? No, man. They, anybody can be seconded to the agency if they request it or if they want it. But SF has worked a lot with the agency over the years.
Where's that?
Down towards the bottom, Patrick.
We're gonna avoid. Well, we're not gonna talk about the ANA Afghani police question. We don't know. Have a good night, Steve.
Speaking about SF training, some of the older SF guys said it was a big deal for guys to get MFF or Sephardic. That's still the case, or has it become more integrated in the Q course? Well, MFF was. but now apparently no more. I mean, but being on a Halo team and getting to go to MFF, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Sephardic was another big deal. That was a hard course to get. It's like a skill level 3 course. So yeah, that's a big deal for SF dudes.
Mm-hmm. When the CIA conducts missions overseas, do they scoop up special operations guys from every branch, or do they only work with your own units? What do you mean by scooping them up?
He means like guys who are seconded, over to the agency.
I think that's something that like happened in Vietnam and happened. Mm. It's something I don't know that it's really. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen or there aren't liaisons or whatever, but it doesn't really happen, I think, in the way that it used to so much.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to be careful with this question, because when you say, or I say seconded, we're not talking about a soldier, a guy who's a ranger or a Green Beret or whoever being given to the agency and given a cover and being placed on an agency operation like that. But they will be given over to the agency and work an agency job. So like one example would be 5th Special Forces Group guys going to Jordan and working on a CIA train and advise mission to train guys to go into Syria.
Yeah.
There were back in the day in Central America, you would have guys, 7th Special Forces Group guys seconded to the CIA to go down there and like train different units.
Yeah. Now I think the State Department will do that also, right?
So SF missions happen, like FID missions happen with. The State Department has to be in on it and bless off on it. So like those kind of missions, like state is involved, CIA is involved, and the type of operation, there's like 12, they were called 1206 programs or 1208 programs. Now there's just a different number that's assigned to it, but it all just determines like who's paying for it. So sometimes it's like 70% State Department and 30% Army. Sometimes it's vice versa. It just depends on the different situation.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here.
Jack, do you look back on your time in Ranger Regiment or group more fondly? I think, I have great experiences and memories with both units. I think I look back on the Ranger Regiment a little bit more fondly, maybe because it was my first assignment, or like it was more formative, maybe. I don't know. Ranger Battalion was a good time for the most part. Got to do some awesome things there, some great deployments. 5th group was like just super frustrating for me. Going on deployment was good, but everything else about it was pretty horrible.
Was it?
Yeah. That's what I was talking about in the last stream about 5th Ranger Battalion.
Yeah.
So I probably have a little bit more fondness for Ranger Battalion, but I'll say no matter what unit you go to, they all have their unique brand of stupidity.
Yeah, 100%.
Like the grass is always greener.
Yeah.
But no matter where you go, you're still in the Army. Don't think you're not.
Yeah. Or the Navy or the Air Force or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's see here. U.S. military winter warfare capabilities. I mean, it's probably very limited right now just because we're not... Well, I take that back.
Both winter warfare and Arctic warfare, which are different, they've invested in that quite a bit the last couple of years.
Yeah, I was going to say, Afghanistan has harsh winters in some places. I mean, I know in Oregon one Christmas, there was like...
Oh, yeah, I've never been there. I've heard it's horrible.
Oh, yeah. There was I want to say almost 2 feet of snow. It was brutal. So I think that the winter warfare, the winter warfare capability is good. If we were fighting in an environment that were always like that, it'd be better. I think the 10th Mountain has always had a really good capability, and who's up in Alaska?
Fort Wainwright. I can't remember the name of the infantry unit up there offhand. There's a striker brigade up there.
Yeah, and I'm sure those guys are really good at it. I mean, it's the type of thing, and you becoming better at environmental, at environmental warfare the more you do it. A lot of lessons learned and things like that.
There's a number of conventional army has a number of winter courses. A lot of them focus more on survival than combat.
Right.
Those are two different things.
Right.
Like combat skiing is like a whole separate skill set. Special forces has some different winter warfare courses. But I think really where we make our money is when we send our guys to go train with the Canadian Rangers, with the Norwegian military.
Yeah.
Like these are countries that have land above the Arctic Circle.
Right.
Like it's really hardcore shit.
Right.
And so when those guys are able to pass their skills on to us, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
And if we ever go to war in the Arctic or in the high north, those countries are going to take the lead really and show us the right way to do things, because we're never going to be as good at Arctic warfare as the Canadians are. It's just geography and where our focus is. But we have made some inroads on that over the last years, sending guys to Norway, sending guys to Sweden, doing the cross training, sending guys up to Alaska. I've seen even the Rangers doing cross training up in Alaska again, which I'm sure they're not too happy about.
I don't think we ever did any winter warfare training. I'm trying to remember. I don't think so.
Back in the day, First Group had, there's one battalion that they did all the Thailand and like Philippines deployments. Then there was another battalion that they did all the Korea and Alaska deployments.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some hurt feelings over that.
Yes, there were. Yes.
So Alex asked you what Sephardic was?
What Sephardic is?
Mm-hmm. What is
Sephardic is it's a special forces course at Fort Bragg that teaches direct action, like CQD. So there are a couple of different courses, and I don't know how in-depth you guys want me to get, because there's a whole interesting story.
Sephardic, Cephalic.
Yeah. So the way a lot of this came about was there was Blue Light, which we talked about previously, the Special Forces Counterterrorism Unit, which was the stopgap before Delta was created. When Delta got stood up, there's no longer a need for Blue Light, so the unit was stood down. However, SF wanted to maintain some of those capabilities, so they created SOT, Special Operations Training, which was like a direct action course to teach direct action tactics. And they did a lot of stuff that was pretty novel, at the time, in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, that not too many people were doing. Explosive entry, like snipers shooting over the assault force as they're going in and making entry, all that kind of stuff. Some of the core guys, the core team from Blue Light, went over to SOT and created that. SOT kind of, sort of, eventually it got stood down, but Sephardic got created. And Sephardic was, that acronym is so long, it was intentional because they didn't want anyone to know what they were doing. And Sephardic, it just confuses the shit out of people.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And they created Sephardic. There was a part of a core curriculum that came from JSOC, and they vetted it because JSOC had they wanted some help on some certain tasks. So this direct action mission was coming back to SF in a sense. And Sephardic was stood up on Fort Bragg to train on all those tasks. And initially it was only for the SIF teams. It still is. Sephardic is for the SIF teams. But because of that, SOT was stood down. And now you had a point where the regular ODAs were, their DA capability was starting to atrophy. And it's not really an ODA's job. Their primary job is not really DA.
Right.
But it's still a capability. It's still something that they need to be able to do with their indige, with their host nation partner forces. So those skills were starting to atrophy. And by the 1990s, it was Jerry Boykin supported the endeavor. And I think it started with some guys from Third Group actually to create Cephalic. And Cephalic was like a 1 week, 2 week course to take ODAs in there. And unlike Sephardic and even OTC and all those other courses, Cephalic is for the ODA to come intact into the course and train together as they will deploy together.
Yeah.
And it trains them on all these direct action tasks, starting with, It starts at the basic. Like, this is how you set up your rifle. This is how you go out to the range. This is how you do CQB marksmanship, and then take you as far as they can take you with, doing. You even do company level raids, which is something that like SF never did at the time.
Yeah.
But then when the war on terror kicked off, they were doing company level operations. So it paid some dividends down the road. And I wrote an article about it a long time ago. But there's a whole interesting history there that I could go into. That's like a whole episode in of itself.
Yeah.
So maybe someday,
Well, we will get some of the people involved in those courses on.
Absolutely. I know a handful of them. The OGs. Those are our OGs right there.
Somebody asked about Iran. Let's see. What the question? Iran. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if you have a lot of info. I know that there were, basically the government came out and said that they'd be rationing fuel, and that prices were going up like 50%. So there were protests, and I think like they said maybe up to 100 people so far have died in those protests.
And Iran shut off the internet.
Right, for like 4 days, 5 days, something like that. Or their internet went down. It went, they said that it was down to like 4% available, usage. Now, whether the internet went down or the government shut it down, I mean, it's kind of...
It's like the same thing they did in Egypt during the Tahrir Square thing. Like, they just greatly limited the internet, Someone's asking the difference between winter and Arctic warfare. The difference is, of course, the environment, the how cold it is, but also the austerity. In the Arctic, there's very little infrastructure above the Arctic Circle, so the logistical lines get spread thinner and thinner.
Yeah.
So everything in the Arctic really is going to be small teams. It is a soft environment. Like, you're not going to have infantry battalions up there. Like that notion that you're going to have ground troops, like ground warfare in the Arctic, would never really happen because those logistic lines would be stretched. Now go look at a map of the Arctic and you'll see there is something known as, the tyranny of distance. And in the Arctic, that's in full effect. That the distances are so great.
Yeah.
And there's just so much empty, unoccupied land.
Yeah.
That it changes the nature of how we would be able to fight up there.
So James Bond said that Syria is Halo for a reason. And I imagine, having never been a Syria instructor, I imagine there probably is a reason that they're Halo. I bet that Syria instructors have some sort of follow-on type of assignment.
Maybe. What's your opinion about conventional forces' ability to conduct warfare against an insurgency in the Middle East, and should it mostly be left up to special operations units? I mean, yeah, it should be left up to special operations units who are trained and organized to do that. But just I think the size and scope of what we were dealing with in Iraq, it was nation building, but we're not allowed to call it nation building, just necessitated that we didn't have enough SF guys to accomplish what our government wanted to do there. We needed more. And you had all these units who were like NPs, they were field artillery, there were all kinds of stuff, regular infantry, who were not trained, equipped, and organized to fight a counterinsurgency battle, but they did. I mean, they manned up to the mission as best as they could.
Well, and the problem with conventional forces fighting an insurgency is another problem is that we're not the host country. So the methods that you would need to use to really fight an insurgency, which would be locking down an area, securing that area, like you have to seize areas, and you have to make
safeguard the population.
You have to safeguard the population. You have to make those areas, basically, unobtainable or off limits to the insurgents. You need a host nation to do that because they don't look like an occupying force taking over territory.
And guess what? GOI, fucking useless. Useless.
The steps. So when it comes to counterinsurgency, the reason you need unconventional forces instead of conventional forces is because, one, conventional forces, so unconventional forces are going to work with the host nation generally. Conventional forces are going to be the bulk force, if that makes sense. An unconventional force will be advising a large, host nation force. A conventional force will actually be the force, be the armed force in that area. They don't know the politics. They don't know the religion. Yeah. They don't know all these things.
You got 18-year-old kids coming out of basic training.
Right.
They don't speak the language.
Right. The opportunities for them to turn the locals, the indigenous people, against them is high, not because they're bad people, just because they're not locals. They don't know the ways. And you don't know how to question a person to make sure that when they're not an insurgent or coming in an outside influence.
Something interesting I would point out, though. I mean, I don't mean to come down too hard on like the young infantry private or MP out there doing that job. Because one thing I did notice was that the younger soldiers are more adaptable to that coin mission
100%
than these like old colonels who just don't fucking get it.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm not saying that it takes a special forces soldier to do that job. I'm saying that because
some SF guys suck at it.
Right, some SF guys suck at it. And you can have some cherry private who is just good at relating to people and listens.
Person.
Right.
And sometimes the National Guard guys who are cops are better suited for that mission.
Right. I'm just saying in terms of like having conventional forces in there as a conventional force, as an infantry battalion, it inhibits the ability. The locals who have information are more likely to go talk to a host nation intelligence officer than the S2 of an infantry battalion. So it's very difficult for us to fight for any country to fight an insurgency in another country. That's what I believe.
We're not good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have to acknowledge, our national style and our own culture is that we're good at blowing shit up and fucking up other militaries. Like, we're good at that.
Yeah.
The U.S. military, not good at coin. The CIA, not good at regime change.
To find, honestly, you would have to recruit, if you wanted to make really, really good counter-guerrilla or whatever forces who are working with host nation stuff, foreign internal defense, I don't think you start out with the special forces model. I don't think you start out with a shooter model. You start out with a customer service model. You find people who are really good at interacting with other people, and then you run those people through a selection, and get them the skills they need.
You need a Lawrence of Arabia type of person.
You need people who, you can have these hard mothers, motherfuckers who can pass any selection you throw at them, but then they treat foreign nationals not so well.
Yeah.
But maybe these guys are guys who don't even listen to their own kids. You know what I'm saying? It's like it takes a very certain personality.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like, an operator is not necessarily a good fit guy.
Right.
And it's really funny to hear some of the stories sometimes where, like, Delta gets handed a fit mission, and, like, the difference between the guys who came from SF and the guys who came from Rangers.
Yeah.
And the Rangers are like, oh, these guys, they don't know how to use a map and compass. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Can you believe that? And, like, the SF guys are like, yes, I believe it.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Before we'll get some more questions here, but I do need to give the sales pitch. Now that we're kind of like deep into the stream here. Thanks for joining us again, and please make sure you subscribe to the stream if you haven't already. Just hit the subscribe button down there, and please hit the bell notification so you get notified when we go live next time.
Also, for those of you who are new, who not necessarily new to us, but came on after we started the stream, you'll notice a little $sign down at the bottom. So if you ever want your question answered first, or you just want to congratulate us on doing a good job, trust us, this money is not going in our pocket. It's paying rent at this
Yes,
point.
it is.
We
keeping
are
the lights on.
we are what, maybe one third the way.
Yeah.
We're 1/3 the way with Patreon and everything to covering the rent on this place where it's not coming out of our pockets. It'd be nice if we could get to that point shortly. For those of you who are not Patreon subscribers, we encourage you, even if it's just $1 a month. Jack and I are going to start offering more benefits, more features to our Patreon subscribers, including more intimate question and answers.
Yeah, I'm already uploading exclusive interviews with Special Forces veterans, and you and I will do some stuff, and I'm going to have some other bonus content coming up on there in the near future.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Patreon link is down below in the description if you guys want to check that out. We appreciate it. There's also the Amazon affiliate link that has a bunch of books that I recommend on, the kinds of subjects we talk about on the stream. Again, you check that out. We get a small commission if you buy something through it, and it's no added expense to you.
What are your thoughts about the end of the year deadline that DPRK is going to realize? Did you see that question from Sarah?
Jack, what are your thoughts about the end of the year deadline that DPRK is giving regarding relations with the U.S. and the U.S. more or less shrugging it off, not taking it seriously? I'm actually not sure what the end of the year deadline is. I mean, DPRK, they play this game, the North Koreans play this game where they ratchet tensions all the way up as high as they possibly can, and it's a negotiation strategy. So they can get more oil out of us or more bags of rice or whatever it is. Obviously if you've ratcheted tension up as high, up to the breaking point, you can get more than if things were relatively stable in negotiations. So, I mean, it's a tactic they keep using over and over again. China has declared the Bering Strait a waterway of national interest or something to that effect. That's why I'm interested in winter warfare. Yeah, China is a member of the Arctic Council, even though they're not an Arctic nation. And they have declared the Arctic waterways to be, it's interesting because they declare the South China Sea to be exclusively for China, but the Arctic waterways, which they have no claim on whatsoever, that belongs to the world. It's typical double dealing bullshit that those guys are up to. I missed something here. Jack, what are your thoughts? DP, okay. How is the U.S. government managing the Turkish government essentially holding U.S. citizens hostage for diplomatic leverage? Brunson, various journalists. I actually wasn't aware that they were holding Americans. I mean, they're holding people at various times. They arrest journalists left and right, including ours.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I'm sure there's diplomatic negotiations ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, are they holding them as diplomatic leverage, or are they just holding them because they're assholes and arrest journalists on the regular?
I think it's the latter.
I'm not sure. I don't know that. I would actually argue that holding American citizens gives you the opposite of diplomatic leverage, especially with somebody with the ego of Trump. I think that if you were to try to hold a U.S. citizen as a bargaining chip, Trump would double down on.
It depends. Well, he just traded Taliban for hostages in Afghanistan, so I mean, it's not necessarily true.
Oh, I didn't. Well, but they're also not a political. They're not. It's not like another president.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That they're negotiating with.
Yeah.
Your opinion on Eric Prince's proposal about privatizing warfare in the Middle East and sending contractors for long-term contracts with local forces and conducting offensive operations? I think there's absolutely a role for contractors, but I would not hand over the war to contractors, and I would not hand over the war to the likes of Eric Prince. There are other people out there.
I mean, history is rife with examples of professional military organizations, mercenaries,
including the United States.
Yeah. Exactly. So the idea itself is not anything new to history. I think that for a privatized military to be successful, though, it has to have a lot of discipline, strong leadership, and that's not how I see these things being run. Mm-hmm. They're being run more like bad boy clubs.
Fly by night.
Yeah. So I mean, if you were to talk about, some of the of history's more well-known private armies, they were militarily exceptional, I think, in terms of
Some.
Well, yeah, that's true. Some.
And the ones that were effective in a limited way.
Right. Yeah.
There are some other examples. I mean, somebody, who, I enjoy his work and, we talk once in a while is Evan Barlow, who ran Executive Outcomes in Africa.
Okay, yeah.
And then STEP in Nigeria more recently. And he's written some books. He wrote a memoir. He also wrote about the theory of warfare in Africa. Very, very smart guy. It'd be interesting to hear him really get it deep into that.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating. I mean, one of the problems you run into is you've got no Geneva Convention. You have no diplomatic, you don't have what is it, the status forces,
right?
Agreements. You're really putting yourself out there in that type of situation.
You worked as a contractor, but you were working for the United States government too, which is different than working for a purely private entity.
Right.
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 So the control mechanisms are different.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is that if you go in there working as a for a company or whatever, you're a civilian. And what does the Geneva Convention say about civilians on the battlefield? I mean, I don't think that they really have the same type of protection that uniformed soldiers have.
And it's also a question of if they step out of line and do something wrong, you can't court-martial them.
Right.
Again, what's the accountability mechanism?
Right. And also, by the same token, because there's no status of forces agreement, if they get rolled up by the local cops, there's no mechanism to get them out of prison. It's challenging, and I would also agree with you about Eric Prince and and that
too many shenanigans. I mean, the guy's working for the Chinese government right now. No, thank you. I'm going to pass on that.
I mean, I don't know. But look, I mean, those,
But I mean, we have used historically and to this day is, it's a hybrid. We use contractors and we use uniformed soldiers, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that sort of arrangement. And the thing you also have to keep in mind, people talk about contractors a lot and how great they are, how horrible they are, or whatever the case is. But most contractors are not armed. That's something that the public doesn't understand. They think it's Blackwater guys with tribal tattoos and M4s and they're going out, cruising around Baghdad. But the vast majority of contractors are the dudes that fix your air conditioners, that fix the shitters, that cook your food.
That basically make your life livable.
Yeah.
So you're, it's the Halliburton people, it's the people who come out and set up these big buildings
the mechanics.
Yeah.
A question that someone asked earlier about dog handlers that we missed.
Oh.
Dog handlers were contractors back in the day, and it's only, more recently, in the last decade, that the different units stood up their own kennels.
Right.
And the dog handlers are actual rangers and Green Berets and so on. In the past, they were all contractors.
But they weren't those weren't.
No, they wouldn't.
Were they? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, because I knew that a lot of security companies were using bomb sniffing dogs and stuff like that. I didn't know that.
Oh no, we had Belgian Malinois attack dogs, and the contractors were handling them.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. I did not know that. Okay.
Yep. That was back in the day. Now today they are actual rangers and SF guys who are dog handlers. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
What's your opinion about the 18 X-ray program and how do you think it affected SF as a whole? The 18 X-rays get shit on a lot, and sometimes with cause and sometimes without. It depends a lot on the individual person and their maturity level.
So hold on. The 18 X-ray program is a program that the Army has where a person can enlist in the Army and go straight to Green Beret selection, SFAS, and then on to the Q course. Instead of, it used to be that a person had to have at least a tour one 4-year tour, whatever, in the Army.
You used to have to be E5s.
I thought you had to be an E6, but I could be wrong.
E5.
Okay.
Yeah. They were probably. You definitely had to be an E5 by the time you graduate, even if you're an X-ray.
Okay. So which I think that under the global war on terror, because special forces at one point in time when it was stood up, it was people with native language. Well, I mean, it wasn't just, but like they were heavily, they wanted people with native language skills. They wanted people who were mechanics. Like they wanted people with skills, with these abilities to go in. SF has changed, since that time.
It changed, the X-ray program changed the nature of SF because instead of like these old salty guys.
Right.
But there are a couple things, even before the war, I think they had some staffing problems, having enough guys.
Well, that's why they had to do it.
And then they expanded, they created 4th Battalion in every group. So now you need even more guys.
Yeah.
So because of the demands of the war and the demands the Pentagon was putting on SF, they kind of had to do that.
Yeah.
Now the flip side to it is, you have a lot of young, immature guys, and in some senses, the ODA ends up turning into a squad,
right?
Where it's like the team sergeant and a bunch of privates,
right?
That kind of thing can exist, right? But the flip side is it brought in a lot of young guys with new experience who were not so jaded. Some of them had work experience, they had college, they had these different things that they brought to the table. And I think SF kind of did a shit job at marginalizing those guys and just taking a shit on them.
Yeah.
When they should have brought them into the force and given them that coaching and teaching and mentoring and sending them on the right path.
Yeah.
And instead, I think SF spent a lot of time talking about how fucking horrible X-rays are and saying you guys are shit.
Yeah.
And these are patriotic young men who signed on the dotted line, right? I think SF could have done a much better job at integrating them into the force and taking advantage of what they did bring to the table.
Right.
So, yeah, I think in some ways it was a squandered opportunity. Did anything happen to Dale Comstock after contracting in Yemen? I don't think so, man. I haven't talked to Dale in a little while.
I haven't either.
I think he's still in Indonesia having a good time, actually. Yeah, out in Bali. Luca, thank you, man. Appreciate the tip.
Did Luca ask a question or anything?
No, he didn't. He just dropped us a tip.
Nice. Thank you, Luca. Really appreciate it, man.
On the topic of North Korea, Trump's policies actually worked lately, especially due to missile tests. They seem to have gone back to 2015 levels. Does Trump's ego just not want to backpedal? When you say work, what do you mean by work? You have to define what your foreign policy objective is. Is it to normalize relations with South Korea? Is it to get them to stop missile tests? Is it to get them to denuclearize? I think whatever metric you want to use, we can say, no, Trump's approach is not working, but then neither was Carter's or Bush's or Obama's. So it's a tough nut to crack, and nobody has gotten it right.
Well, look, first off, for me, we won't know if... every day since Trump got elected, every day since Trump got elected, he's been painted a traitor, and the Democrats have, first the Russia thing, and now, the Democrats have, nobody's actually been able to do their job. The Democrats haven't, but nobody's been able to do their job since the day Trump got elected.
And Trump has also gutted the State Department.
No, I'm not gonna.
They're hurting.
Look, I'm not gonna defend what Trump has done. I'm just saying that, see, I don't want to get in a position where I'm defending the crap that Trump does, but nobody has done anything because of the whole circus. But what I believe about what Trump did in Korea when he walked across the border, is that he set a standard. He set a precedent, because up to that point, every president has stood back behind ballistic glass and looked across the border, and that was them, and this is us. Trump set a standard that now kind of every president has to follow. Otherwise Trump sort of showed them up, and so.
But now you're talking about U.S. domestic policy. You're not talking about how we relate to North Korea.
No, but what I'm saying is I think that the way you relate to North Korea is sort of, it's, if you stand back behind the glass, if that is the image that you give.
You mean like when Trump spoke at the Veterans Day parade here in New York City behind ballistic glass?
I mean, the Pope does it too. I mean, I think that's different. I'm talking about in relating to the country, in relating for the U.S. and North Korea, right? If you stand in South Korea and look, with the guard force and behind ballistic glass and look across, then you give one message to Korea, to North Korea. If you cross that line, you're giving another message. You're giving the message. You're kind of saying that. That we can talk. Like you're not. You're saying we can talk. Like you're making a gesture and you're humanizing them in a way that now, if every president were to do that, who knows what that'll mean 12, 15, 20 years down the line. It might not change now, but maybe the president, the next president of North Korea who knows that that's happening will have a different opinion of how to relate with a president of the United States if that keeps on happening.
Maybe. I will accept that it's a gesture of good faith. I don't know. There's a lot of ifs in that.
Well, sure, but nothing that anybody's been doing prior to that has done anything. So why not shake it up, right?
I accept that. But I don't think it's gotten us anywhere as of now.
Probably, it probably hasn't.
But as I said, before, it's not, and as you said, it's not as if we had gotten so far and made so much progress previously. So.
Yeah, I feel as though I don't know. We'll just see next. I don't know. We'll see over the next 4 years. I think that. Even Vanity Fair came out with an article saying that the impeachment is basically putting the election in the pockets of the Republicans.
Yeah, probably.
So we'll see, over the next 4 years if the Democrats decide not to, spend their entire, another entire, election term going after him. If anything can happen with North Korea, I would hope, but who knows, And Trump may not be the guy to do it. He's brash. He's got a huge ego. He doesn't think things through. But maybe he's setting the precedent for the next person to sort of make that gesture. Somebody,
Alex, thank you. Alex wants to know, do you think the military needs to teach more financial education in new recruits? I hear a lot about new sailors and soldiers getting into massive amounts of debts only a year in. Yes, sir, I do. It's not really the Army's job to teach you how to live your life, but yeah, I think they should. And I also think on the way out, when guys are ETSing, I think they need to do a better job at preparing guys for that.
Yeah.
About getting a job, about as we were talking about earlier, the legalities and illegalities of contracting.
Yeah.
Because a lot of young dudes will get out of the military and they think they're under the same legal status as contractors, and you're not.
Yeah.
So I think we could do both on the intake and the outtake side. We could do better with that. Because it's not the Army's job to be your mom and dad, but at the same time, maybe we can take care of the troops a little bit better than we are.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And we said thanks to Luca, right?
Mm-hmm. Have you read The Gorilla Factory? Thank you, DJ. That's really cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Have you read The Guerrilla Force? It's by an SF officer, and he was all about unconventional warfare aspect, talks about how he realized hardly anyone in SF cared about it. No, I haven't read that book, but I'll take a look for it now that you mentioned it.
I'll tell you what, that is true that hardly anybody in Special Forces cares about it.
We talk a lot about it. We make a lot of noise about how much we care about it.
It's their job, but honestly,
but
hardly anybody in the military, it's sort of like when you call customer service of a company, how many times do you actually get hold of somebody who actually cares, who actually is good at their job? Guerrilla warfare or counterinsurgency, foreign internal defense, it's hard, and it's hard to deal. It's hard to be an advisor, right? It's hard not to be the cool guy kicking down a door and going into a room, or being the first guy. Like when you're an advisor, you're kind of like, oh, you guys go,
Counterterrorism, direct action is the sexy mission.
It's a sexy mission,
and it provides easy to understand, measurable results.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there are bullets on target, right? You can see, did you hit the target or not? Did you get the HVT or not?
Right.
A UW mission, that could take like 25 years to mature that.
Right.
Like, you might not see the results of that for decades, generations.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really hard job that takes a very specific personality type. And even though it's the Special Forces or the Green Beret job to do that, they don't screen guys for that personality type. They screen them for their ability to carry a rock. To learn skills. I guess you could say Robin Sage. What's the
DJ's comment? He's referencing the interview I did. Maybe it's the interview I did with Dale Comstock, or maybe it was the follow-up comment I made about it. But he's saying your advice about walking. If you roll into a room full of dudes in grunt-style T-shirts with Cry Precision, he's talking about the Yemen Merc story should be framed and hung in every ACAP transition office. And yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So Dale and the other guys in that Yemen story, where they went and they worked as mercenaries in Yemen, it was like they showed up in a hotel room, I think like in New Jersey or something like that, and like Dale walks in there and it's like all these dudes wearing like their vet bro grunt style T-shirts and their Cry Precision pants and shit like that.
In a hotel room in New Jersey?
Yeah, and my story was, the point I made about that, I was like, look bro, if you're going on a contract job and you walk into the room and that's what you see, you need to turn right around and walk back out, because there's going to be nothing but trouble there for you. And that was the ACAP is the course that you go through when you get out processed out of the Army. And that's what I'm saying, is that like there needs to be some education with these guys, these young Rangers or Ranger babies, when they get out of the Army. Like, look, man, like you are not under the same status. You're not under Title 10. You're not protected by the Geneva Convention. You're not protected by U.S. law. If you get captured, it's not like, our POWs in Vietnam, like we're going to fight to get you back.
Right.
We're going to use every amount of leverage we have, including sending the Sunday Raiders to come get you.
Right.
The government will do what they can to get our boys back. If you're a contractor, you're on your own, bro.
Yeah.
You need to be real with yourself about that. And you just need to be aware of it.
Yeah. And the challenge also with that is like you need to really make sure that the company you're working for is crossing their T's and dotting their I's in terms of what they're doing, because if they're operating illegally in a country, you might not even know that.
Right. And they will even, some of these companies will lie to you and say, we're working under the auspices of this or that 3-letter agency.
Right.
And they're full of fucking shit. They're lying to you about what you're doing and where the orders are coming from. So point one, when you're going to do contract work overseas, take that contract they want you to sign to an attorney and have them look at it. That should be point one.
Yeah. We didn't talk about the Dem debate. I didn't watch the Dem debate.
Neither did I. I just saw clips from it.
I haven't watched the Democratic debate since, I think, the first one where everybody raised their hand about...
Jesus.
about being in support of open borders. At that point, I felt like I didn't need to watch any more Democratic debates. Or was it open borders, or was it medical care?
Should they get free health insurance?
Should they get free health insurance? That's right. Free health insurance. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you guys are throwing this election already, huh? Jack, what are some college classes that talk specifically about geopolitics and political affairs with adversarial powers? Would it just be political science? Yeah, I mean, political science is generally not a course. That's like a major. But courses, strategic studies, international strategic affairs, even like comparative politics, international relations, all that kind of stuff, we'll get into it. Unless you're in some like specific national defense program, you're not going to find probably a course that specializes specifically in like, great power politics. That's like kind of a niche subject. Maybe you find that in graduate school. But you look as an undergrad, look into the political science department, like strategic studies, international strategic affairs, so something like that. You'll have to look at the syllabus to figure it out exactly what's going to be in there, because each college differs. Any plans for merchandise for the show, like hats, patches, and shirts?
Yes.
Yeah, we were actually talking about a pin. It'll probably be a T-shirt too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have some plans. We'll have to start designing that stuff. Yeah.
According to Reuters, the Navy is still going to proceed with calling Gallagher before a board to pull his trident. I just saw that. I mean, the Navy's got some brass balls if they're going to do that after the boss chimed in and said, you're not going to take his trident.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like insubordination.
It is.
Do that.
It really is, because he is the commander in chief.
Yeah, and I think Trump probably has or should do a little bit more than send a tweet. Like, there needs to be a memo sent to the Navy. Something like say it shouldn't just be a tweet.
Yeah, that might not be considered official channels.
Right. But still, I mean, that's some balls on the Navy's part if they're going to go forward with that after the president said no, don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't think the Navy has that kind of balls. I don't. Yeah, patches, OMG patches. Is a tweet in order? I don't think it is. I don't think a tweet constitutes an order, and I think DOD has actually come out and said that in the past.
Have they?
That it's not policy. But they all do watch the Twitter feed, and they take that as signaling.
I'm not sure how a tweet would not be considered an order, because it is communication. And, I mean, is it outlined? It's written communication, right?
It's written communication, but I think that the White House has to give paper to DOD. Like, they have to receive an actual directive.
Okay.
And that's probably where a lot of confusion comes from. But nonetheless, I mean, they're all watching that Twitter to see, because that's like it's an informal signal about what direction they're supposed to go in.
Right.
So.
Right.
How effective was the CIA interrogation program from 2002 to 2008 in... Oh, it just jumped. Or no, he deleted his question as I was reading it.
Patrick, why'd you delete that?
I don't know. He was asking something about the agency interrogation program.
Fastest foxhole you've seen dug? I mean, the only time I dug foxholes was in Ranger School.
You're hasty.
Or you're hasty.
You want to share a hasty, Ranger buddy?
Yeah. I mean, you make some foxholes when you come under fire supply, or when rounds start hitting close to you. Like, you'll make a foxhole out of it. Find out how quickly you can dig a hole with your ass.
All right, here it is. How effective was the CIA interrogation program from 2002 to 2008 in gaining intelligence, and do you think Gina Haspel should be punished in any way for their actions? I mean, I don't know if Gina specifically should be punished, even though she's gotten caught up in it. I mean, it's a complicated subject. I mean, like, books have been written about this. I supported Gina's nomination because, she lived through all that bullshit, so she knew how to avoid it, or she knew she had to avoid it. She needed to have the agency avoid it. I supported her being in that position. But she has been, I think the criticism was that, didn't she destroy some of the videotapes?
I don't know.
Yeah. How effective it was, is very much under debate. Like, Ali Soufan, who's in the FBI, he's had criticisms of it. There have been a lot of criticisms over the years that the effectiveness of the program has been exaggerated, and that they obtained information through other means. And I think Soufan specifically has said, the PRB has limited him from saying things, saying that's classified, you can't say it. And he's like, no, it's not that it's classified. It's that you don't want me to say that because it undermines your narrative about the interrogation program. So, there are different people saying different things. I personally, if you're talking about enhanced interrogation, I'm against it. I think, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze at the end of the day.
Yeah. For me, it depends on what things you say fall under enhanced interrogation.
And I saw it in the Army too. I wrote about this in my memoir, that JSOC had contractors putting people in enhanced interrogation.
Again, like what do we call enhanced interrogation?
So some of the stuff that I witnessed was dudes who were not allowed to sit down. They were not allowed to sleep. They were not allowed to eat. So they were put under those stressors, and although I did not witness it with my eyes, I heard detainees getting slapped around inside the cells, or inside the interrogation rooms. And my privates, when they were on detail in there, some of the people who worked in that facility, it's called the TIF, would encourage the privates to beat up the detainees.
So I don't agree with that.
And I told them, I told them, and this is your fucking responsibility.
That's not interrogation.
This is your responsibility as a leader, and this goes back to the whole war crimes thing. Your responsibility as a leader is to protect your boys from that shit.
Yeah.
That's why I told them, I said, absolutely do not get involved in that. This was after Abu Ghraib.
Yeah.
I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I was like, if they put you on the spot and tell you to do that, you come get me.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think that I think that an enhanced interrogation works. I think that it can be valuable. I think, though, that it takes a very, very mature, logical, and restrained person to be able to do that.
Use the technique.
To use the technique.
Without getting lost up.
Without like... They're using the technique as a tool, not
because you're a sadist,
right? And not even a sadist, but because you weren't loved enough as a kid or whatever. Like anytime somebody gets a modicum of power, you start to see not who they really are, but you start to see like where their insecurities lie and things like that. Because the more power they get, the more they have the ability to act out. Without repercussion.
It's a Stanley Milgram experiment.
Yeah.
And we talk about with the re-interrogation method.
Yeah.
Like, the method is okay if it's used in a mature fashion.
Right.
I would argue that ECT just isn't worth it. Or EIT isn't worth it. But I see what you're saying.
I mean, I've seen cases where enhanced interrogation has actually helped the person being interrogated, because they were afraid that they were told that anybody coming over from Pakistan was just getting rolled up and sent to like Abu Ghraib or shot or whatever. That's what they were told by like their taxi driver or whatever, coming over the border, and they stuck to their story, even though their story, because there was another person with them, even though their story was an absolute lie, and like interrogating both of them on separately, like they were lying, and so because of their lies, the idea was, well, let's send these guys off. They're obviously hiding something, right? And in various techniques, I believe that if you don't harm a person, that with a good night's sleep and a meal, they walk out the same person they were when they walked in, right? You haven't harmed them.
Right, you're not talking about pulling out fingernails.
No, or anything that harms them.
And if it's some guy, a really bad guy, like a Zarqawi type figure, do I really have a problem with him being put in a stress position?
Right.
And told he can't sit down
until
he talks? Is that the end of the world? No, not really. But then you like that scenario where you have a guy like that and he has this information that you need in a hurry. It comes around so rarely. And so often it's like, it's some guy way down on the totem pole.
It's like, when people talk about sleep deprivation, how many college students, like, law students or med students, will stay up for 2 or 3 days?
Yeah, but that's totally different than being incarcerated by the fucking JSOC task force.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying, though, is that if the things you're putting somebody through are things that they might go through as a civilian anyway,
I got put through worse in SEER school.
Right.
But I was also a volunteer, and I was not actually captured by an enemy force.
Right.
I knew it was a role-playing scenario.
So to finish the story is that once one of these people, like, because they were tired, because they were cold, and they were being checked by a medic on a regular basis and everything else like that to make sure they weren't hypothermic, to make sure all these things. But once they were just so worn down that they
can't resist.
They gave up.
Yeah.
And they said, this is who we really are. And they were nobodies. They were a couple of guys, an uncle and a nephew who came across the border who on a regular basis to work construction because there were a lot of construction jobs going on. But their taxi driver had told them
they were going to get shot.
That they were going to get shot because they were coming across the border. If those guys had enhanced interrogation techniques had not been used on those guys, they would have gone off to Abu Ghraib or wherever else. They would have just been sent up for suspicious activity.
But do you see how this is kind of a bad example because you used enhanced interrogation on nobodies. You got nothing out of it.
Yeah. No, are you kidding me? Okay. These guys got across a border control point, BCP basically. They came across at the BCP. That's when the driver told them. So they get out and they start running, right? Mm-hmm. They check their ID cards, and they start running, and then they get rolled up and this and that. So I wouldn't say that we got nothing. I would say those guys got everything because then they went to sleep. They got meals. They were given money.
And sent home eventually.
They were given money and sent home, and they were thankful.
But was it worth it to use quote unquote torture for that?
What was torturous about sleep deprivation? What was torturous about that's what I'm saying is, I guess it depends on what you call torture. Because the guys didn't have any bruises when they left. The guys weren't missing body parts. The guys hadn't been, if you showed them a doll and said, where did the bad man touch you? They wouldn't be able to point to any particular point. But what they did get to do is go home to their families instead of being sent up to Abu Ghraib because they were lying. Because, and the people interrogating them knew they were lying. So the thing is, we have to assume they're lying for a reason. Why are they lying?
But now, because of the whole shit show that has unfolded in our government and even internationally with enhanced interrogation, was it worth it for that?
Yeah, I think
it was worth these very controversial policies.
But see, I don't think that the cases that create the most controversy exceed the bounds of enhanced interrogation and roll into the area of abuse, the area of sadism, the area I don't so maybe I think of enhanced interrogation differently than
I'm not trying to compare what you're describing to what that psychotic chick at Abu Ghraib was doing.
Right.
I understand there's differences between the two.
I think it takes a very specific type of person to be able to do any type of interrogation, and maintain control and not get carried away and understand that these are just tools. It's like if you give a carpenter a hammer, right? And he hammers a nail, but then he goes around and starts beating everything, right?
It can get out of control. I mean, even in SEER school, there are reasons why that school has to be so professionally run because the instructors, if you have unprofessional instructors, that shit's going to get totally out of control.
100%.
Very quickly.
And I bet that those instructors are go through psychological, because if you look at the Stanford prison experiment, right? Having power will corrupt just about anybody if they don't keep a firm hold and keep in check. So I think it takes a very specific type of person to be able to run enhanced interrogation where it's just very methodical very professional, and it's not like, oh yeah, I'm gonna punish you. It's like, here, that's a lie. Here's a technique.
Right.
That's a lie. Here's a technique. Like, the enhanced interrogation is not used to punish a person. It is used to lower their defenses, to wear them down, so that, it goes anyway. But we probably.
All right. I mean, yeah, no, we've gone for like 3 hours now. This is a long stream.
What do we miss here?
Yeah, we'll hit up like a few questions real quick, and then we'll call it a night.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Do you think Edward Snowden's reemergence and disclosure of U.S. wrongdoings with surveillance and cyber attacks? I'm not sure what the question is, but fuck Ed Snowden. Do you ever hear the use of insects like spiders and scorpions during enhanced interrogation? I recall something. No, I've never heard of that.
No, and I'll tell you what. Like, if something like spiders or scorpions or something were used, they weren't like, it might be part of a fear up. It would be like having a barking dog next to a person. They're not actually going to let that dog bite the person. But the problem with fear up as an interrogation technique is if the person does not break, then they basically called your bluff. Right? So if you're using some type of thing to increase their fear, for their personal safety, or whatever, and obviously you're not going to follow through. You're not going to let a dog bite a person. You're not going to put a scorpion.
It's been done.
I understand, but those people. But that's not the technique. That's abuse.
Yeah.
That's not the technique. You know what I mean? It's not, because once you start. Look, the Vietnamese prove this, and other people prove this. Once you start damaging a person, then they just shut down. Like, their brain closes. Like, the idea is not to take them to this point where
they're broken,
where they just don't care anymore. You drill into somebody's knee, and a lot of people just like. They'll just mentally break, and you'll never get anything out of them. They're just like, I'm done, right? So the problem with like using fear up, like using spiders or scorpions in front of a person or whatever, is if they don't have a real phobia of that, and you don't do it, you've lost a lot of control in the interrogation. You've lost a lot of rapport, because you're always trying to build rapport with the person, even if you're trying to scare them or whatever, you're trying to build rapport with them, Hey, Cianola, or who was it? Cianola.
Someone's referencing the movie Killer Elite. It's based on a book called The Feathermen, actually. It was written by a former SAS guy. He says there's a scene where they kill a dude during SAS selection in the mountains, and something like that happened recently. There were 3 recruits that died on I think they're called the Brecon Beacons, very like steep hills that they hold the SAS selection on, where you're going up and down, and they died exposure to the weather. That's happened several times on the SAS selection course. OPSEC. Will MARSOC always be in limbo of being shut down and brought back? Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Well, guys, I think that's probably enough. I'm amazed that so many of you stuck with us through the show. I mean, we had like 35 to 40 people watching tonight.
That's amazing.
So, it's really cool, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody who like...
Dude, it's super cool. People throwing money in the tip jar.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for breaking our cherry on that. Busting our cherry on the whole super chat. We really appreciate it. It helps out. Jack and I,
more than you know.
Yeah, more than you guys know. Like, we really appreciate it.
Yeah. So again, please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the bell icon so you get notified when we go live. Our next show is going to be with my in-studio live guest, a friend of mine who's in the British military, and then he served in, or he didn't serve, he volunteered in Syria and Ukraine as a volunteer fighter. So we're gonna have a lot of interesting stories with him. So that's coming next episode. In the meantime, please check out we have our Patreon link in the description. So if you're interested in supporting the page or supporting the stream and getting like some exclusive content, that's there for you if you're interested. But otherwise, man, thanks for coming by. We really appreciate all you guys coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll see you again next week, okay?
Cheers. Oh, also, if you think about it, like, share our videos, share our links. If anybody wants to modify them and cut them down, we're okay with that, right?
Like snippets?
Yeah, snippets.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just link us, let us know. Or put a link to the full thing if you do, and let us know that you've done it. So, thanks, guys.
All right, see you next time.